Chapter 278. In the middle of the night, when almost everyone was asleep, Wu Ming appeared on the roof of the Shuayu residence and looked at the Yuanzong mountain. That's right, he was looking at the Yuanzong mountain that had been destroyed but had reappeared. Space displacement, huh? Wu Ming frowned and explained the reason for the reappearance of the Yuanzong mountain. Teacher, it seems like the other party has already found their way here. Accompanied by golden particles, young Gil landed beside Wu Ming and looked at the Yuanzong mountain together. The Magic Association and the Holy Church are going to be busy again. Wu Ming shook his head expressionlessly. Previously, the reason why Wu Ming didn't cover up the disappearance of the Yuanzong mountain and directly attributed it to the meteorite and natural gas was because the sun that Wu Ming summoned that night had attracted the attention of the residents in the surrounding cities. The Magic Association and the Holy Church used their magic to hint at the meteorite and natural gas explosion and successfully imprinted it into the hearts of the people. And now, the Yuanzong mountain that had been covered up and disappeared had reappeared. Without thinking, Wu Ming knew that it would be extremely troublesome to deal with the aftermath. Since the other party is already here, shouldn't we go and meet them, teacher? Young Gil said with a relaxed expression. Actually, that's what I was thinking, but... Wu Ming smiled mysteriously. Young Gil shivered. His mischievous personality wasn't affected by his teacher at all. The next morning, Ilya woke up in her own bedroom. Although Ilya had stayed in Wu Ming's house for a short period of time, it was still easy for her to sleep soundly. I don't recognize the ceiling, Ilya said in a daze. Right, this is Big Brother and Mayo's house. No, you can't sleep in someone else's house. Although she said that, Ilya didn't panic. After all, she had stayed here for quite some time and this could be considered her second home. Ilya hurriedly sat up and patted her face. Then, she began to wash up in the bathroom in the bedroom. It had to be said that one could really do anything with money. Not only did Wu Ming and Mayo's rooms have their own private bathroom, but even the rest of the guest rooms had their own private bathroom. And these independent bathrooms were luxurious, with toilets, washstands, baths, and almost everything. And because it was Wu Ming's magic workshop, it had an automatic cleaning function, which was why Wu Ming didn't hire others to clean such a large house. Although Mei Yu would clean it sometimes, because it was too clean, Mei Yu didn't have anything to clean for Mei Yu. I can only say that as expected of Big Brother. Mei Yu seems to be living the life of a young lady, Ilya thought. After walking out of the bedroom, Ilya arrived at the dining room. Ilya had been living in Wu Ming's house for nearly every morning. Either she would get up because she couldn't stay in bed in someone else's house, or she would be gently awakened by Wu Ming. But, after washing up, the first thing she would do was to go to the dining room of the Shuayu residence. After all, it's Big Brother's food. I have to treat this food well. Ilya gulped, somewhat impatient. The dining room of the Shuayu residence wasn't large, but it was still much larger than the dining rooms of ordinary people. It was more than enough to accommodate Rin Enbin, Ilya, and the others. After arriving at the dining room, Ilya discovered that Rin Enbin, Luvia, Mei Yu, Blackie, Bazette, and Gil were already sitting at the table and enjoying the food. Am I the last one? Ilya scratched her head in embarrassment. Too slow, Ilya. If you came any later, I would have eaten your share, Blackie said mischievously. How can that be? Ilya hurriedly sat down, expressing her ownership of the breakfast. That's why, Ilya-chan, you can only eat good food if you sleep early and wake up early. Ruby darted out from Ilya's hair, wriggled her body, and floated beside Ilya to tease her. I'm also waking up early now, but everyone woke up earlier than me. Speaking of which, why is everyone able to wake up so early? Ilya sat down on her seat, and began to enjoy the breakfast that her big brother had prepared for her. Seriously, even though you're Ilya, you still have the habit of lazing in bed. I think you were able to wake up because of the temptation of Big Brother's breakfast. Blackie's words seemed to have exposed Ilya's secret, and Ilya's face instantly flushed red. How is that possible? Ahaha. In response, Ilya could only laugh dryly. If it's me, I only need to sleep for 4 hours, Bazette suddenly said seriously. Ilya laughed dryly. If she remembered correctly, this big sister in front of her seemed to be called a monster by Big Sister Ling and Big Sister Luvia. As for Lord Mei Yu, it's because of a good habit that she's been cultivating. Sapphire floated beside Mei Yu and explained. Because Because Brother Wuming has been working very hard. So I wanted to wake up early to help Brother Wuming do something. Mei Yu said with a slightly red face. As for Ling and Livia, I think they were the ones who were purely tempted by Wuming's delicious food. Ruby floated above Ling and Livia's heads, and said playfully while wriggling her body. How is that possible, Ruby? Ilya was just about to refute when she saw Ling and Livia's faces instantly turn red. Could it really be? Ilya was embarrassed. I think you're tired of living, Ruby. Rin Enbin instantly grabbed Ruby. How dare you casually judge a lady? You better be mentally prepared, Ruby. Wait. Ilya, save me. Then, Ruby was pulled into a room by two people. Ahaha. Ilya was helpless. What about Gil Kuan? In order to hide her embarrassment, Ilya looked at this child who looked younger than her but was a king. Isn't this normal? I'm a king. Which king would laze around in bed? Young Gil held a glass of red wine elegantly and took a sip. Is that so? Ilya smiled. Speaking of which, why is Big Brother gone? Is he still in the kitchen? Ilya just realized that Wuming was not among the people eating here. If it's teacher, he's outside now. Young Gil seemed to have thought of something and smiled slightly. If it's possible, I suggest that all of you go out and take a look. It must be very interesting. Young Gil said mysteriously. Coincidentally, Rin Enbin and Livia had also returned at this time, along with Ruby who seemed to have been played with. Ruby! Ilya looked at Ruby with some heartache. Ilya, you must avenge me. Ruby looked like she could not take it anymore and her voice began to tremble. Please let me deal with my sister, Ilya-sama. As Sapphire spoke, a string appeared from her body and wrapped around Ruby, dragging her away. Wait. Little Blue. When she was being pushed away by Sapphire, Ruby regained her energetic voice. As expected, she's pretending again. Ilya was helpless. By the way, what did Wuming do again? Rin Enbin asked curiously after hearing young Gil's words. You'll know when you go out. Young Gil took another sip of red wine elegantly. Ilya and the others looked at each other, then stood up one after another and walked outside. Big Brother, listen to Gil. Kuan, Ilya said as she pushed the door open, but the moment she opened the door, Ilya's voice stopped abruptly. As if she was stunned by the scene before her, Ilya was stunned. Of course the others were the same. Wuming, who was standing in the snow, turned his head and smiled. What, have you all finished eating? Chapter 279. Everyone was stunned. Of course, it wasn't because Wuming had suddenly become so handsome. Instead, it was because of their surroundings. The mansion was still the familiar mansion. The sky was still the familiar sky. The city outside was still the same city. However, Big Brother, what's going on? Why is it snowing all of a sudden? Ilya was a little excited. That's right. The mansion was still the familiar mansion. The sky was still the familiar sky. The city outside was still the same city. Everything that Ilya and the others saw was covered in a layer of snow. In short, it was snowing. Is this what Gilgamesh meant when he said it was very interesting? Although I don't know how you made it snow in the summer, why did you suddenly do it? Rin Tasaka walked to the snowy ground in the courtyard. He asked Wuming while enjoying the coldness brought about by the snowflakes. Everyone walked to the courtyard as well. Through the temperature and material structure, this is indeed snow. Bazit analyzed seriously. Amazing. Big Brother, it's really snow. Ilya started running in the courtyard. She was enjoying the fun that could only be enjoyed in winter. Mei Yu also reached out her hand in nostalgia. She felt the coolness brought about by the snowflakes. I didn't do anything to the weather. Wuming waved his hand innocently. Isn't it Big Brother who did it? Little Black asked in confusion. Everyone looked at Wuming in confusion. We've already arrived in a parallel world? Everyone in the house exclaimed. Only Mei Yu, who had more or less guessed it, and young Gil, who already knew about it, didn't make a fuss. Hey, don't be so surprised. Aren't you all prepared to head to a parallel world? Wuming covered his ears helplessly. But, after sleeping for a night, we arrived in a parallel world. It's not shocking at all. Little Black had a look of regret. Yeah, shouldn't transmigrating to a parallel world be very spectacular? Transmigrating to a parallel world just like that is quite boring, Ilya agreed. Traveling through parallel worlds is an ability comparable to magic. I originally wanted to observe it carefully, but it's a pity. Bazit coughed and said with a reddened face. More importantly, we're going to travel to a parallel world. A parallel world. What do you think this is? Do you think we'll arrive at our destination after taking a nap on the train? Rin and Osaka said frantically. You're just a mere monkey. To put it bluntly, you're just throwing a tantrum because you didn't see it, Wuxia said gracefully. It was as if she wasn't among the group of people who had screamed just now. You upstart. Aren't you the same? At least I'll say it out loud. You, on the other hand, only know how to keep it in your heart and pretend to be elegant. How disgusting. Rin and Osaka also elegantly played with her twin ponytails and began mocking Wuxia. A mere Japanese monkey pretending to be elegant is even more disgusting. You blonde upstart. Japanese monkeys. Immediately, the two of them began to wrestle with each other like children. Sigh, Ruby sighed helplessly as she watched the two of them wrestle. As expected, giving up on the two of them was the right choice. My Ilya is still the best. She's bullied by me every day and doesn't throw a tantra. Immediately, Ruby said with a playful tone as if she was taking pleasure in others' misfortune. Mei Sama is also better than Wuxia-sama in this aspect. Also, sister, Ilya-sama isn't a toy. Sapphire said and tapped Ruby. That's right. Don't tease me every day, Ruby. Ilya also protested. Really, you guys are really noisy. Wuming said helplessly. Then, Wuming held Mayo's hand and walked to the side. Brother Wuming? Mayu didn't understand why Wuming was holding her hand. Wuming didn't answer Mayo's question and only looked at Mayu dotingly. This made Mayu blush. Actually, the enemy already appeared last night. When Wuming said this, whether it was Rin Enbin and Wuxia who were fooling around or Mayu who was being held by Wuming, everyone tensed up. Of course, except for the young Gil. The Yuzong mountain that disappeared last night has reappeared. Wasn't it done by the Magic Association or the Holy Church? Ilya asked. The Magic Association wouldn't use a method to repair the Yuzong mountain in one night. It's not worth it. As for the Holy Church, they're the same as the Magic Association. Rin Enbin shook his head. That's right. Also, if my senses aren't wrong, the Yuzong mountain's reappearance is due to displacement magic. Wuming held Mayo's hand and said to everyone. Are you talking about the Ainsworth family? Wuxia asked solemnly. Most likely. Wuming nodded. Feeling the tension from Mayo's body, Wuming gently held the back of Mayo's hand. Don't worry, Mayu. This time, I'll take care of Ainsworth once and for all. Wuming said with incomparable confidence. Okay, I believe in Brother Wuming. Mayu hugged Wuming's arm, her face filled with warmth. Ah-heh, Little Black coughed. Ah. Mayu hurriedly let go of Wuming's arm. It's time for a meeting. Even Mayu can't be lovey-dovey in front of us. Little Black said sternly. Yes, yes. Mayu nodded with a red face. Wuming laughed. You little girl. You're obviously jealous. However, as if he had gotten the words he wanted, Little Black laughed. Since Big Brother said so, then I'll hug Big Brother's arm. Heh. Little Black pounced and instantly fell into Wuming's arms. Wuming subconsciously caught Little Black. Ah! Little Black, how can you do this? Ilya shouted and hurriedly ran to Wuming's side. As a girl, how can you be so immature? As she spoke, Ilya tugged at Little Black's arm that was hugging Wuming. Hee, Ilya is jealous, right? Do you want to do it together with me? Little Black rolled his eyes and said sneakily. Ha! That. Ilya was slightly hesitant and stunned. Seeing the hesitant Ilya, Little Black felt as if he had caught something that could be used against her. As expected, Ilya is jealous. Ah! I'm not. Anyway, let go of Big Brother. Ilya started tugging again with a red face. That, Ilya, Little Black, let go of Big Brother first. Mayu sat beside Wuming and said shyly. Since it's like this, then let's hug Big Brother together. Little Black decided to just go with the flow. What a sinful man. Bazette shook his head. Lalikon. Rin and Osaka and Luia said in disdain. This king is happy to see this side of teacher. Young Gil pretended to be mature as he looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming's face was filled with helplessness. All right, let's stop when it's appropriate. Wu Ming raised his hand and instantly slammed it down. Bam! Chapter 280. Wu Ming raised his hand and slashed down. The hand blade that landed consecutively hit young Jill, Ilya, and Little Black's heads. Ugh! Ilya held her head and yelled. It hurts. Big brother, what are you doing? Little Black protested. You guys are already considered light. Wu Ming pointed at young Gil. Ilya and Little Black turned around and saw that young Gil had fainted on the spot. Smoke was rising from his head. Then why is Mei Yu fine? Little Black saw that his attack had failed and quickly changed the target. Ha! Mei Yu was shocked. Mei Yu is very obedient, unlike you and Ilya. As he said that, Wu Ming patted Mei Yu's head. Mei Yu cooperatively rubbed her head against his. Little Black and Ilya stared at Wu Ming and Mei Yu with puffed-up cheeks. Seeing Ilya and Little Black's reaction, Wu Ming quickly patted their heads and apologized. All right, it's my fault. I'll treat you guys to something later as an apology. Please forgive me. That's more like it. I say, it's about time to continue the topic. Rin Enbin held his forehead helplessly. That's right. Jokes are enough. After all, we still have serious matters to attend to. Lu Weiya nodded. Wu Ming patted Ilya and Little Black's heads again, and gestured for them to return to their seats. Knowing that it was time to be serious, the two of them returned to their seats. As for Mei Yu, she naturally continued to sit beside Wu Ming. Last night, I purposely went to the new Yuanzhong mountain to investigate. As he spoke, Wu Ming began to recall. Wu Ming cast a few concealment tactics on himself and quietly arrived at the Yuanzhong mountain. As expected, part of the ley lines have been replaced. Wu Ming crouched on the ground with one hand on the ground and examined the ley lines of the Yuanzhong mountain. Wu Ming stood up and looked in the direction of the entrance. Mei Yu had once told Wu Ming that when she first came to this world, she had walked out of the big hole. In this way, through counter-evidence, the enemy should have appeared in the big hole in the Yuanzhong mountain. With that said, Wu Ming walked towards the entrance of the large hole. Wu Ming stopped when he was about to approach. To be safe, let's use this, Wu Ming said as he reached his hand into the golden ripples and took out a card. It depicted a person wearing a skull mask and holding a curved dagger. This was the Assassin class card. Class card Assassin. Install, Dream Summon. In an instant, Wu Ming's mana wrapped around the class card. Then, the class card melted and turned into a ball of mana that wrapped around Wu Ming. After the mana calmed down, Wu Ming appeared in a black robe. The hooded black robe wrapped tightly around Wu Ming. Only his face was exposed. Wu Ming wore a skull mask that could only cover his eyes. In addition to his expressionless face, anyone would think that he was an emotionless killer. As expected, it's the cursed wrist again. With that said, Wu Ming revealed an arm that was hidden under the cloak. The arm was wrapped in bandages and no skin could be seen. However, it was no different from Wu Ming's normal arm except for an extra layer of bandages. At this moment, the arm wrapped in bandages was emitting wisps of black gas that spread towards Wu Ming's body. The arm of the demon god? No wonder Shinji Madu was deranged. Even without the side effects of the card, ordinary people would be corroded by this arm. To think that he could still maintain a little bit of self-awareness. Wu Ming felt the evil energy from his arm as if it could not be suppressed and was about to corrode Wu Ming. However, since it's just a mere power, you should calm down. With that said, wisps of lightning burst out from Wu Ming's body. Wu Ming's bandaged arm seemed to be trembling. The black gas was retracted and it calmed down. Wu Ming retracted his arm under his robe and disappeared from where he stood in a flash. Inside the Yuanzhong mountain, two females appeared here. The one on the left spoke first. This should be the Yuanzhong mountain of the other world. She was dressed strangely. Her lower body was covered in golden armor and her upper body was only covered by clothes that covered her chest. There were red patterns on her abdomen and waist and golden armor on her arms. Her hair was tied into two thin ponytails with a decorative horn embedded on one side of the ponytails. Coupled with her cold eyes, she had the aura of a queen. This woman was none other than Angelica Ainsworth, the one who used the Gilgamesh card. Really, it's just a holy grail. Why would the two of us need to make a move? Isn't this too much of a fuss? The one on the right spoke. She had red hair that was tied into two ponytails. She wore tattered fur clothes that covered her abdomen. Her lower body was covered in fur, and her legs were covered with fur boots that looked like long boots. Her golden eyes were filled with raging madness, accompanied by a wide smile, which made people feel terrified. However, the most terrifying thing was her right hand. Her huge right hand was as thick as a small car, and she was holding a hammer that was filled with lightning. Don't be careless, Beatrice Frauerchad. Although Hyunryong was defeated by Lord Julian, he was absorbed by the Holy Grail that crossed over here. There's no guarantee that he won't come back to life. Don't forget, when you used the Hercules card, you were killed by him. If Lord Julian didn't save you, you wouldn't be standing here. After listening to Angelica's words, the girl named Beatrice was a little scared. At that time, the berserker who came with Atlas was Beatrice. For some unknown reason, Beatrice, who used the berserker class card, completely went berserk, and her appearance became the same as the original berserker. When Wuming invaded her inner world, Beatrice had a mental breakdown because of Wuming. She directly contacted the dream summoning and turned into a puppet and disappeared. Although that's the case, you're not dead. Compared to the others, you're easier to control. This is why Lord Julian replaced you, Angelica said coldly.
Yes, I know.
Beatrice pretended to say helplessly, but she still looked quite arrogant. However, Angelica wouldn't say anything to Beatrice. As a puppet, all she needed to do was to obey her master's orders and nothing else was required. Let's go. Lord Mayu should be here. Let's complete the mission as soon as possible. What should I say? Knowing that I'm likely to be here, Julian only sent 2 people.
A voice came from the void.
Who is it? Chapter 281. Angelica and Beatrice were both shocked.
Both of them did not notice the incoming enemy.
A black figure walked out of the shadows. Why, I haven't seen you for 2 months. Don't you recognize me, Angelica? The person took off his hood and revealed his face. It's you. Wuming, no, I should call you Hyunryong. Angelica's eyes narrowed suddenly. It's him? Compared to Angelica, Beatrice's performance was much worse. She clearly felt the fear in her heart. It was Wuming who invaded her inner world and caused her to have a mental breakdown and disappear.
The one beside you is the berserker, right?
Wuming seemed to recognize Beatrice and looked at her. After all, Wuming was the one who caused her to have a mental breakdown. Wuming naturally knew what she looked like in her inner world. How pitiful. She was used as a puppet by Julian again. Wuming was not surprised. He just felt a little pity. After understanding Beatrice's inner world, Wuming really felt sorry for this girl. However, although he felt sorry for her, Wuming would not show mercy to his enemies. Damn it! Don't underestimate me. Beatrice was furious when she felt Wuming's pitiful eyes. In an instant, the giant hammer in Beatrice's hand flashed with purple lightning and sizzled. Zila dash! Beatrice controlled the purple lightning and blasted it in Wuming's direction. Is this lightning that can cause harm to God? After Wuming became a god slayer, even if he left the world of god slayers, the god slayer's physique remained with Wuming. It had a very high magic resistance. Spells that did not reach the god level would not work on god slayers. Only magic that could cause harm to God or pure physical attacks could cause harm to god slayers. This special effect naturally included Wuming's avatar as a servant. But, if that's all, then there's no need to defend. As Wuming spoke, he did not do anything. He only used his physical body to take Beatrice's lightning attack. The result was naturally intact. What? He took my attack with just his physical body, and he's still intact. Beatrice was in disbelief. After all, Wuming, who had undergone the root baptism and had grown a lot, could be regarded as a top existence among fantasy breeds. As a top existence of fantasy breeds, his defense could not be broken by an ordinary attack, even if he was a servant's avatar. It doesn't look like you used a defensive ability or the ability of a class card. Angelica frowned. Did you recognize the class card I'm using now? You're right. After all, you're a member of the Ainsworth family. I'm showing off in front of an expert. With that said, Wu-Ming cancelled the assassin class card. But then again, Ainsworth's things are really useful.
Wu-Ming smiled.
It seems that the class cards that were scattered in this world should have been recovered by you, Angelica said indifferently.
Why do you want it?
Wu-Ming put the assassin into the golden ripple, but he was not in a hurry to take his hand out. I don't think you'll just give us the class card, Hyunryong. Angelica narrowed her eyes. Of course, as long as your goal is still Mei Yu. With that said, Wu-Ming pulled his hand out of the golden ripple, and along with Wu-Ming's hand, he pulled out the golden twisted scepter.
Then we're enemies.
Noble and powerful, wise and kind. I will incarnate into a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. With the chanting of the soul language, Wu-Ming's magic power seemed to have become endless, and it spread to the surroundings wantonly. This huge amount of magic power. Angelica and Beatrice raised their hands and subconsciously resisted the storm caused by Wu-Ming's magic power. The power of the magician incarnation was not only able to give people protection, enhance the power of magic, and speed up the chanting of spells. The most important thing was that after activating the magician incarnation, Wu-Ming's magic output was doubled. For example, Wu-Ming's magic power was a lake. Usually, Wu-Ming relied on the tap connected to his home to extract water. Now, Wu-Ming relied on opening the dam gate to extract water. What did this mean? This meant that Wu-Ming who activated the magician incarnation could use more powerful magic. Wu-Ming touched the ground with the bottom of the staff of Ain's Ergong. Just in an instant, Angelica and Beatrice found that the scene around them changed. The two of them stood on a huge rock in the middle of an endless expanse of magma. As for Wu-Ming, he floated in the sky and looked down at the two of them from above. Inherent barrier. Nazarik's seventh layer of magma hell. The magician's buff allowed Wu-Ming to instantly activate the inherent barrier. Not only that, but the inherent barrier was also strengthened.
This is
inherent barrier? Beatrice broke out in cold sweat. Even if she knew that Angelica had a world-defying noble phantasm, Beatrice, who already had a psychological fear of Wu-Ming, was even more afraid. Let me give you a greeting, ladies. Wu-Ming gracefully performed an ancient noble's etiquette, and then raised the staff of Ain's Ergong. Parallel deployment, super magic, fall down. Countless interlocking magic circles constantly appeared in every corner of the inherent barrier. The sky, magma, rocks, almost every place was occupied by magic circles, except for a few meters around the two. Countless magic circles seemed to be connected, and one by one, all the magic circles flashed with blue light.
Not good.
Angelica quickly activated Gate of Babylon, and countless golden ripples appeared around Angelica and Beatrice. There were simply too many of them. It was impossible to use the Gate of Babylon's noble phantasm to destroy all of these magic circles that were obviously not to be trifled with. Beatrice, if you don't want to die, hurry up and defend. Angelica said to Beatrice anxiously.
I know it even if you don't say it.
Beatrice was sweating, and the giant hammer in her hand produced violent lightning. Well, that's it. If you can survive, then I will return the class card to you. After that, Wu-Ming smiled and disappeared from the inherent barrier. A few seconds after Wu-Ming disappeared, all the magic circles seemed to have reached the limit, and they burst out with amazing light and heat, dyeing the entire inherent barrier into a world of light. Chapter 282. After that, I immediately activated the spell that transmigrated through parallel worlds overnight, bringing you and the Shuayu residents here while you were still asleep. Wu-Ming finished his explanation. In other words, when the enemy attacked, you wiped them out and brought us to the enemy's lair? Rin Enosaka summarized.
If only it was as easy as you make it out to be.
Wu-Ming looked at Rin Enosaka helplessly. But the enemy was indeed wiped out by you, wasn't it? Rin Enosaka waved his hand. Speaking of which, if you were able to wipe out the enemy's strongest force, how did you get defeated? Luvia raised her doubts. In his explanation, Wu-Ming said that the enemy was the Ainsworth family's strongest force.
This has nothing to do with strength.
Wu-Ming shook his head.
Look at Gil. He was also defeated by me.
Wu-Ming then pointed at young Gil who had woken up. Did I fall asleep just now? I think I dreamt that Sensei knocked on my head and my head hurt.
Young Gil had a pained expression as he held his head with one hand.
That's true, all right, Ilya retorted helplessly. Cough anyway, the enemy used something that countered me and tricked me. I'm not the same person now. Wu Ming continued. Also, the most important thing is that Mount Yuanzong exploded again.
Wu Ming helplessly waved his hand.
What?
Everyone was shocked.
That. Because I was a little interested. Yesterday's move was a little exaggerated.
Ahaha.
Wu Ming laughed awkwardly. Although Wu Ming released his supreme level magic in his own inherent barrier and the inherent barrier was strengthened by the magician's attribute, the supreme level magic that Wu Ming used yesterday was one of the best supreme level magic spells that focused on destruction. Moreover, because of the sorcerer avatar's bonus, the super magic that originally required a long time to be released could be released in just a dozen seconds. Also because Wu Ming used magic power explosion once, Wu Ming used parallel spread, and the supreme level magic he used almost covered the entire inherent barrier. The so-called parallel spread was a move that used multiple skills. This was the skill that Wu Ming analyzed from the class card. After all, it was troublesome to use supreme level magic one by one, so Wu Ming simply used parallel spread and released countless supreme level magic spells. Moreover, Wu Ming also used chain formation, which linked the power of each magic formation to get the result of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = infinity. That was also related to Wu Ming's double authority. That was the power of Wu Ming's noble phantasm. 12 incarnations. Each incarnation could be said to be a powerful noble phantasm. However, those noble phantasm could only be used by Wu Ming alone, because the magical power consumed by those noble phantasm was comparable to the magical power of a holy grail. Then, after being hit by such a powerful attack, the inherent barrier was directly broken. Even the Yuanzong Mountains seemed to have been hit by a meteor once again. Wu Ming didn't know how the news reported this time. That night, Wu Ming directly used sorcery to leave. Well, after all, it's also an accident that I caused. It's better to run away quickly. Wu Ming waved his hand awkwardly. Really, even if that's the case, the magic association won't trouble you. What are you afraid of? Rin Enbin helplessly stroked his cheek. So, if we just follow such a big building to the parallel world, won't it attract the attention of the officials? Luvia asked. It had to be said that Luvia had asked a good question. Of course not. As you know, I lived in this world for a while. I also have my own house in Winterwood City in this world. When I moved Shuasuki's house here, I chose to exchange it with this world's house. Wu Ming said with a smile, then waved his hand, and a screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen, a house similar to Shuasuki's house appeared. This is the original location of Shuasuki's house. I have moved the house in this world, and now the house in this world is Shuasuki's house. Wu Ming explained. As expected, there are many times when I feel that Wu Ming is a friend and not an enemy. That's great. Rin Enbin sighed and then said. I have to say, Rin Enbin is right. It's great that you're not an enemy. Luvia also said. You're making it sound too serious. Wu Ming laughed. The enemy is more difficult to deal with than you think. Speaking of the enemy, we still don't know the exact situation of the enemy. Big brother, can you explain to us about the Ainsworth family? Ilya looked at Wu Ming curiously. Ainsworth family, huh? Wu Ming thought for a moment. Okay then. Then, they moved to the conference room. Wu Ming sat solemnly at the head of the table. Everyone sat in their own seats and looked at Wu Ming meticulously. First of all, the Ainsworth family is a family that specializes in substitution magic. However, because they specialize in substitution magic, they have developed the originally inferior substitution magic to its peak. No matter if it's space, personality, heroic spirit power, or even traveling to a parallel world, they can do it all. That's how they created the class cards. As he spoke, Wu Ming took out 6 class cards and slapped them on the table. Just in case, may you, Ilya, take these 6 class cards first. As he spoke, Wu Ming tossed the class cards to Mei Yu and Ilya. Hey, shoo! Ilya made a cute sound with the help of the card. I'll teach you dream summoning personally later. Mei Yu and Ilya nodded. The Ainsworth family usually relies on heroic spirit cards and substitution magic. They don't have any effective strategies for this. Well, I'm not prepared to let you go to the battlefield anyway. Wu Ming waved his hand. Everyone was stunned. What do you mean by not letting us go to the battlefield? Rin and Osaka slammed the table and stood up. You didn't hear wrong. It's the literal meaning, Wu Ming said calmly. Let's not talk about you and Livia. I'm not prepared to let Mei Yu and Ilya go to the battlefield either.
But brother Wu Ming.
Mei Yu looked at Wu Ming with some reluctance. Ilya did the same. I don't have a choice. The enemy's battlefield is no ordinary disaster. I gave you the class card so that you can protect yourselves. In truth, Wu Ming had never intended to let them go to the battlefield. Whether it was before or after they persuaded Wu Ming. Chapter 283. I've always been prepared to attack Ainsworth from the front, whether you come or not, Wu Ming said solemnly. That's because Ainsworth's army is an army of heroic spirits. As soon as Wu Ming said that, everyone's eyes narrowed. Wait a minute. Are you saying that Ainsworth has created a lot of class cards? Livia asked, puzzled. No matter how they thought about it, it was impossible, right? Everyone could not help but think. It's indeed impossible, but the opponent has an item that can mass-produce black mud followers. Black mud followers? That's right. Those are inferior heroes who failed in their pursuit of the Holy Grail. As long as their obsession is not destroyed, they can be resurrected infinitely. Wu Ming could not help but think of the scene where he was tricked. Countless black mud covered the sky and covered the earth. The black mud came from an item in Julian's hand, Pandora's box. Wu Ming had seen clearly that there were followers hidden in the black mud. However, in order to deal with Wu Ming, these followers were turned into waves by the black mud and engulfed Wu Ming. Moreover, what worried Wu Ming the most was that the black mud was mixed with the root dragon's aura, which was the aura of the Great Root. This was equivalent to increasing the power of these black mud followers. Against such a group of powerful troops who were not afraid of death and could resurrect infinitely, Ilya and the others could not deal with it. Leave the specifics to me. Wu Ming shook his head and did not continue. I didn't expect your help in the first place. Naturally, I didn't include you in the battle force. After all, this is a plan that I've been planning for a long time. My original plan was to only bring Mei Yu to fight against Ainsworth. But, it's rare for us to come here and help Big Brother. Ilya lowered her head in disappointment. Ilya! Mei Yu comforted Ilya. Indeed. If it's really as Master said, and the enemy has an army that can resurrect infinitely and isn't afraid of death, I don't think we can defeat them. Bazit said seriously. Wu Ming sighed when he saw the disappointment on everyone's faces. After all, Wu Ming didn't take them into account, so Ilya and the others weren't part of his initial plan. However, we can't be sure that the other party won't create new dolls and class cards, so I have a new plan, Wu Ming said again to comfort everyone. Does this mean that we can help Big Brother? Ilya's eyes lit up. Wu Ming waved his hand. Well, that's only if the other party has card users of other ranks. Before I explain the plan, let me pick up two people first. Pick someone up. Ah, that's right. Pick someone up. Wu Ming laughed mischievously. In the main hall of the Xiaofan residence, a red-haired boy with orange pupils and a purple-haired girl with purple pupils stood together. Looking at the way they held hands, it was obvious that they were a couple. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Shiro Amiya. Nice to meet you. I'm Sakura Madu. Nice to meet you. The two of them greeted a large number of unfamiliar faces politely. That's right, the two of them were Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were saved by Gem Master. They were now brought back by Wu Ming. After Wu Ming and Mei Yu left, just as Shiro Amiya was about to be captured by Angelica, Zelik appeared and took Shiro Amiya away. As for Sakura Madu, she had been taken away by Zelik earlier, so Angelica could only find Shiro Amiya in the Amiya mansion. Amiya, Kuan.
Rindo Sokka had a shocked expression.
Sorrow.
Livia had a look of disbelief.
Brother. Ilya and Xiaohei were dumbfounded. As for Bazet, since he didn't know Shiro Amiya at all, he didn't make a fuss about it. Shiro, Aniai-chan, Sakura, Aniai-chan, long time no see.
Mei Yu, on the other hand, bowed politely after seeing the two of them.
Mei Yu, long time no see, Shiro greeted with a smile. Thank you for your concern, Mei Yu-chan, Sakura Madu replied gently. On the other hand, young Gil kept sizing up Shiro Amiya. Is this sensei's younger brother in this world? Although he looks good, I feel disgusted. For some reason, young Gil didn't like Shiro Amiya. Why is brother here? Ilya's eyes widened as she looked at Wuming in disbelief. Rin Dosaka and Luvia, who had calmed down, reacted. I'm afraid he's Shiro Amiya in this parallel world, the two of them said. Well, anyway, that's how it is. Wuming, who was standing at the side, shrugged. Shiro is a human who doesn't need a class card to unleash the power of a heroic spirit. Everyone instantly looked at Shiro Amiya in surprise. Well, brother is right. Due to an accident, I connected to myself in a parallel world. After I died in that world, I became a heroic spirit. Shiro Amiya helplessly touched the back of his head. That's amazing. To be able to become a heroic spirit, as expected of brother, Ilya said in surprise. Indeed, even if you become a heroic spirit in a parallel world, it also means that you have the qualifications to become a heroic spirit in this world, Bazet said solemnly. By the way, Little Black, your card is Amiya the heroic spirit. Is that for real? Little Black was shocked. Wuming didn't say anything. He only smiled and shrugged. Speaking of which, Wuming looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu who were holding hands. Looks like you and Sakura have made good progress while I was away. Shiro, when are you going to officially meet me as your guardian? Wuming looked at Shiro Amiya with a smile. When Wuming said that, Sakura Madu's face instantly turned red. Big brother. Amiya could only laugh dryly. Rin and Osaka and Luvia's expressions darkened. Although the Shiro Amiya in front of them wasn't the Shiro Amiya they knew. No matter what, the Shiro Amiya in this world was indeed Shiro Amiya. Seeing Shiro Amiya with another woman, the two of them felt uneasy. Bam! Bam! After 2 consecutive karate chops, Rin and Osaka and Luvia calmed down. Well, no matter what, I'll congratulate the two of you. Before Wuming picked up Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, he learned from Zelik that the two of them were sent by Zelik to be under Emilo II's management and become his disciples. Wuming felt that this was a good thing. Wuming had met Emilo II before, and he was a very reliable magician. Zelik told the two that Wuming and Mayo's situation was very safe and that they didn't need to worry. They only needed to study in the clock tower. Therefore, during this period of study, Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu's relationship quickly warmed up and they quickly became a couple. Congratulations, big brother and big sister. Congratulations, Shiro, Gij, big sister Sakura. Congratulations to the two newlyweds. Congratulations. Apart from Rin and Osaka and Luvia, the others naturally congratulated the three of them. Thank you, everyone. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled. Well, it won't be too late to hold the wedding after everything is settled. After saying that, everyone became extremely serious. Chapter 284. They redistributed their seats and sat in the meeting room. Wuming still sat at the head of the table. Rin Enbin, Luvia, Shiro Amiya, and Sakura Madu sat on Wuming's left. Bazet, Ilya, Little Black, and Mei Yu sat on Wuming's right. Gil sat across from Wuming. Since everyone is here, let's start the official allocation. Wuming crossed his arms in front of his chest with a solemn expression. Everyone felt the solemn atmosphere and puffed out their chests. Since the other party's goal is the Holy Grail, Ilya, Little Black, and Mei Yu will be on standby at the Shuoyue mansion. Wuming was the first to speak. Why is it like this? Ilya said with slight displeasure. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. The other party's goal is the Holy Grail. Other than Mei Yu, you and I might also be the other party's target, Little Black advised. Although Mei Yu was slightly dissatisfied, she was also someone who knew the severity of the situation. Hence, she nodded. When Ilya saw that her two companions agreed with Wuming's words, she could only nod helplessly in the end. Well, don't be unhappy. I'll make something nice for you later. Wuming comforted Ilya. Really? Big brother is the best. Ilya smiled happily. Boo-hoo. Big brother is unfair. I want to eat too. Little Black looked like an abandoned puppy. He lay on the table and stared at Wuming. That. Meiyu also looked at Wuming hesitantly. She knew that she could not always cause trouble for her big brother. However, Meiyu really wanted to eat her big brother's delicacies. Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then let's make glutinous rice balls. There will be a share for all three of us. How about that? Little Black said excitedly. I'm looking forward to it.
Ilya said expectantly.
Meiyu nodded lightly. Looking at the three of them who were extremely happy, Wuming smiled from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, there was a loud bang. Rin Enbin slammed the table and stood up. You guys.
We're in the middle of a battle conference.
Can you be more serious? Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled awkwardly but did not say anything. After all, he was their big brother. They had to give him some face. However, the others didn't give him any face, especially Rin and Osaka and Lu Weiya, who had been provoked. Ahem, after all, this is the enemy's time, so let's hurry up. Lu Weiya said angrily, and then turned her head away. Needless to say, Lu Weiya didn't want to see the palace guard, who was already taken, showing off his affection. Ahem, sorry. Let's continue with the battle conference. Wuming coughed awkwardly. The three little Lolas also blushed.
Rin Enbin and loses, you too.
To be honest, Wuming had a headache. Although these two girls were students of the clock tower, they were comparable to first-class magicians. However, in a battle where servants were involved, they were undoubtedly useless. You could say that they were a little hurt, but it happened that the damage they caused was not a big deal at all. Wuming touched his forehead, thought for a moment, and then said, How about this? You two also stay in Shuasuke's house. In this regard, Rin Enbin and Luz didn't show much dissatisfaction. Although they said that they wanted to help, after knowing that the enemy was a servant, they basically gave up the idea of going to the battlefield. Although it was a bit of putting the cart before the horse, Rin Enbin and Luz still wanted to thank Wuming for not treating them as a burden. After all, Wuming didn't want them to come here together. Because of their personal reasons, they were brought here by Wuming. For such a result, the two couldn't say that they were disappointed, but they couldn't say that they were happy. After all, no one wanted to be treated as a useless guy. But, you're different from Ilya and the others. You need to help me drive Shuasuke's. Ha! The two were not surprised by Wuming's assistance. That. Big brother, what do you mean by driving Shuasuke's?
Rin Enbin and Luz were puzzled.
Ilya and the others were also quite puzzled. It means literally. Wuming finished and snapped his fingers. Then, with a pop sound, countless blue semi-virtual screens appeared in the conference room. On the countless blue virtual screens in the conference room, almost all of them showed something that not only Ilya and the others couldn't understand, but even Shiro Amiya, who lived with Wuming for a long time, couldn't understand. Wuming's hand gently moved, and a large number of blue virtual screens were removed, and a special virtual screen floated above Wuming's head. The reason why it was special was that this screen was all about Shuasuke's, and the surrounding real-time surveillance, including the surveillance of the conference room. Looking at the countless partitions, everyone was surprised. Is this a magic workshop? No matter how I look at it, it looks like a laboratory.
Rin Enbin said helplessly.
Well, this is a temple I modified according to modern times. Not only does it have real-time surveillance, but it also has visual obstruction enchantment, magic suppression enchantment platform, autonomous attack chain enchantment, and other autonomous enchantments for attack, defense, and investigation. It also has space folding technology. As long as it is activated, the internal space of Shuasuke's will be instantly enlarged by 100 times, and I have set up all kinds of traps that can be imagined. In addition, there are flight and transformation functions, and after referring to Gil's Vimana, I also added a few nuclear warheads. Wuming said, pointing to the innocent young Gil. Everyone looked at Wuming, who was talking non-stop, and they were all stunned, looking at Wuming blankly. All in all, this is a multifunctional strategic mobile fortress. I named it Shuasuke Temple.
Wuming finished and breathed a sigh of relief.
No wonder I always felt that the house has become a little different. It turned out that it was transformed by my brother. Shiro Amiya sighed. No, Shiro Oniai-san, Brother Wuming did not transform Amiya Mansion, but built a new one in the parallel world. Meiyu pointed out Shiro Amiya's misunderstanding. Well, when I built this house, it was not only to be my and Mayo's home. I have been planning to counterattack Ainsworth, of course. I have to be prepared. Wu-ming waved his hand, indicating that everyone should not make a fuss. Since I met you, my heart has almost gotten used to it. Same. Rin and Osaka and Luvia both sighed at the same time. Well, at first, I just wanted to build a defense base, and it slowly developed into this. Wu-ming scratched his head. In short, your task is to be responsible for assisting us on the battlefield. I will teach you how to use it later. Then, Wu-ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu. Shiro, Sakura, I ask you two again, do you really want to participate? Chapter 285. Wu-ming asked Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu when he went to pick them up from England. Do you really want to participate in this battle? I've already returned and am fully prepared. It doesn't matter if you don't participate. Wu-ming said. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu answered. Brother, I've been working hard to learn magic here just to wait for this day. I'll be wherever Senpai is. And now, their answers were exactly the same as before. Mayo's friends have all come to this world. As her brother, I can't fall behind. I'll be wherever Senpai is. This is also my way of repaying Brother Wu-ming for saving my life. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu's eyes were filled with determination. I'm really an idiot for asking you such a question. Wu-ming shook his head self-deprecatingly. Since you've already decided, then as your brother, I can only fully support you. Shiro and Sakura, you two will be in charge of the attack on Julian. Wu-ming arranged. However, when he mentioned Julian, Shiro Amiya still felt a little gloomy. After all, he considered himself to be a good friend. By the way, Shiro, I'll help you adjust your body later. And Sakura, remember to give me your rank card later. Rank cards created by those things, even if it's just pure strength, will erode your mind if you use it for a long time. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both nodded. Then, Wu-ming looked at Bazette, who had been silent all this time. Wu-ming actually didn't know how to deal with Bazette. Originally, it was only because of his bad taste that he let Bazette become a servant of the Shuayu residence, and he was half forced to come to the parallel world with him. After all, the backlight sword was a super bug-like existence. Even if Wu-ming's heart was super strong, he wouldn't dare take this causal weapon head-on. Who knew if his heart was strong enough? After all, the backlight sword only changed karma to strike the heart, and it didn't necessarily pierce through the heart. Of course, if his main body was here, there was nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to care about what I think. This is a mission given to me by the higher-ups. The only thing I can do is fight. Bazette seemed to know what Wu-ming was thinking, so he said this. Bazette had received news from his superiors that he was to follow Hyunryong to the parallel world, complete all his instructions, and bring back as much information as possible. Of course, those were added by Bazette's superiors. After all, it wasn't easy for them to come to parallel world, so how could they not collect some items? As for the matter of Wu-ming going to the parallel world, Wu-ming had told Zelik that there was no need to deliberately hide it. Instead of letting the higher-ups who were worried about Wu-ming's departure have wild thoughts and add trouble to Wu-ming, it was better to let them feel at ease and be obedient. Since you've said so, follow me to the battlefield. Then, follow Shiro and Sakura as a member of the execution team and attack the enemy leader. After all, you're not the type to fight in groups. I understand. Bazette nodded solemnly. Finally, Wu-ming looked at young Gil who was sitting opposite him and said, Then the last one is you, my disciple. Teacher, do you have a mission? I will be very obedient. Young Gil smiled elegantly and gently. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an innocent and beautiful boy. If it's you, you don't need me to assign you a mission. Just act according to the situation, Wu-ming said with a look of disdain. Why are you like this, teacher? Young Gil looked at Wu-ming as if he had been bullied. Well, but since it's teacher's words, I can only obey. Wu-ming ignored young Gil and looked at everyone. Then that's it. Ilya, Meiyu, and Blackie will stay behind at the Shuayu mansion and act according to the situation. Ling and Luvia will be responsible for driving the Shuayu mansion as support. Shiro, Sakura, and Bazette will be the execution team, specifically targeting Julian. Gil will roam the battlefield, and I will be responsible for resisting the army. Does anyone have any questions? At this moment, Ilya raised her hand. Ilya! Wu Ming called her name. Yes, I want to know how Big Brother is going to resist the servant army. Is he going to fight alone? If not, may you, Blackie, and I can also help. Ilya said with concern. You don't have to worry about this at all. The one who spoke was not Wu Ming, but Shiro Amiya. Big Brother has an army. Shiro Amiya was naturally talking about the golem Wu Ming summoned from Nazalik. At that time, because of various skills flying around on the battlefield, countless golem that were comparable to low-level servants were lost, and the rest were swallowed by the black mud in their struggle. Fortunately, those were only projections, and Wu Ming could naturally continue to summon them. However, even if there were many small soldiers, they were still small soldiers in front of an expert. However, Wu Ming naturally had a new idea. You don't need to worry about that. I'm not going to fight against an army alone. Wu Ming smiled. Well, I'll adjust Shiro's physical condition first. Everyone else, go and rest first. For a moment, only Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu were left in the conference room. Sakura Madu stayed behind to give the rank card to Wu Ming later, and to accompany Shiro Amiya. Well, take off your clothes first. Wu Ming spoke first. Oh! Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both exclaimed. Looking at Sakura Madu, who was blushing, and looking at Shiro Amiya, who was slightly embarrassed, Wu Ming shook his head. Looking at the two's performance, Wu Ming knew that the two probably hadn't reached that stage yet. They probably just held hands, hugged, and kissed. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. Hurry up and take it off. Do you need me to help you? Wu Ming narrowed his eyes, looked at Shiro Amiya, and said threateningly, I know, Big Brother. As someone who lived with Shiro Amiya for almost 5 years, Shiro Amiya naturally understood Wu Ming's temperament. Therefore, Shiro Amiya quickly took off his clothes, leaving only his underwear on. The naked Wei Gong Shilang revealed a body full of strength but not exaggerated muscles. This was the legendary saying, wearing clothes makes one look thin, but taking off clothes makes one look muscular. At this moment, Sakura Madu, who was looking at her lover's body, was already blushing and didn't dare to look over. Ahem, I only told you to take off your upper body. Why did you take off your lower body? Wu Ming laughed mischievously. Shiro Amiya, who was still blushing, suddenly looked helpless. This is good. It's easier to adjust your body. Wu Ming quickly said. Then, Wu Ming snapped his fingers, and a device similar to a man-made transparent culture tank rose from the floor of the conference room. Chapter 286. Let's go in, Wu Ming said. Shiro Amiya looked at Wu Ming, then looked at Sakura Madu, and then walked toward the open container. When he reached the opening, Wu Ming pushed Shiro Amiya, and then slammed the container door shut. Really, this is not a life and death parting. Do you have to be so serious, sigh young people nowadays? Wu Ming pretended to shake his head helplessly. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were originally shocked, were slightly embarrassed after hearing Wu Ming's words. Noble and powerful, wise and kind, that is, I will incarnate into a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. Wu Ming didn't say much nonsense and directly activated the magician incarnation. After all, this was a problem with magic, and this incarnation was more useful. Wu Ming stood in front of the container and stretched out a hand. Then let's begin. After that, a golden magic circle the size of Wu Ming's palm appeared and kept rotating. The container, which originally only contained Shiro Amiya, was instantly filled with liquid, and Shiro Amiya blew a bubble. The originally featureless container also began to glow. Senpai? Sakura Madu ran to the front of the container worriedly. Oni-sama, what's going on, won't Senpai drown? Looking at Sakura Madu's anxious expression, Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Don't worry, these are just some liquid that can make people get oxygen in an environment where they can't breathe. They are often used in the creation of androids. So don't worry. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Sakura Madu relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief. I used hypnosis magic, Shiro. You can have a good sleep. When you wake up, you will find that your body is very good. Wu Ming's words faintly. Shiro Amiya's eyelids began to slowly close in the container. Wu Ming stretched out his hand and took out a book from the golden ripples that appeared at the side. That book was Wu Ming's noble phantasm, the nameless spellbook.
Then I'll start.
After that, Wu Ming closed his eyes, held the nameless spellbook in one hand, and the other hand was flat on his chest, pointing to the container where Shiro Amiya was, and the magic circle on his palm began to change. With the addition of the magician avatar, Wu Ming could now directly release some magic without chanting, which was the case now. Many magic spells on the nameless spellbook were frequently used by Wu Ming, constantly acting on Shiro Amiya. In addition to producing culture fluid to make people fall asleep, this culture tank also had the effect of enhancing magic, playing a supporting role. After all, this was designed by Wu Ming, and it was basically according to Wu Ming's habits. Wu Ming stopped the magic circle in his hand, closed the nameless spellbook, and opened his eyes.
Oni-sama, is it done?
Sakura Madu asked with some uncertainty. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. How is that possible? Shiro's body is even more broken than I thought. Shiro Amiya used his future heroic spirit class card in the parallel world many times, but because he had to send Meiyu away, Shiro Amiya gave up the class card. After that, because the heroic spirit on the class card was the same person as Shiro Amiya, the class card and Shiro Amiya became synchronized. After losing the class card, Shiro Amiya could still continue to use the power of the heroic spirit on the class card. In short, as Shiro Amiya continued to use this power, he began to gradually become a heroic spirit. However, for an ordinary person, this synchronized was a bit too much. Shiro Amiya's body couldn't withstand the burden of becoming a heroic spirit. The power of the heroic spirit was wreaking havoc in Shiro Amiya's body, and if he used this power, it would increase the erosion of the heroic spirit. Not only that, but the class card created by Ainsworth also had the power to erode one's heart and even the body. Every card user's heart would be eroded by the heroic spirit on the class card. Although it wasn't much, over time, their personality would become more like that of the heroic spirit. Perhaps because of the black mud, these class cards had the ability to erode the user's body. This caused Shiro Amiya's body to become quite broken. Wu Ming told all this to Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief and stared blankly at Shiro Amiya. I really didn't expect Shiro to be able to persevere.
Wu Ming sighed. Senpai.
Sakura Madu's eyes began to moisten, which was a sign that tears were about to flow out. Well then, Sakura, please move aside. I'm going to start treating Shiro. Sakura Madu turned her head to look at Wu Ming in shock. Wu Ming naturally knew why Sakura Madu was like that. Well, I didn't say that there was no way to save him. I just said that Shiro's body was seriously damaged.
Wu Ming turned his head away and said unnaturally.
I was just joking. Who knew that Sakura would fall into my trap? I'm sorry.
Well really, Oni-sama is so annoying.
Sakura Madu stopped crying and smiled. If you want to apologize, wait until I completely heal Shiro. Wu Ming smiled apologetically. Then, Wu Ming opened the nameless spellbook again. He still held the book in one hand and held the other hand in front of him, pointing in Shiro's direction. Just like before, a large number of palm-sized magic circles appeared on Wu Ming's palm. The magic circles were interlocked and intertwined. Then, under Wu Ming's command, they attached themselves to the culture tank. The culture tank that was originally shining shone even more brightly. Sakura Madu looked at this scene worriedly. No matter what, Shiro Amiya's body was seriously injured. After a long and short wait, Wu Ming stopped the magic circle in his hand and closed the nameless spellbook. The magic circle attached to the culture tank also turned into magic and disappeared. The culture tank also lost its light, and the culture fluid inside quickly disappeared. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Go and see Shiro, Sakura. Wu Ming smiled at Sakura Madu. Yes, thank you so much, Oni-sama. Thank you so much. Sakura Madu bowed to Wu Ming again and again. Wu Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Shiro is my brother, and you are my sister-in-law. Looking at Sakura Madu who was walking towards the culture tank, Wu Ming said softly. Poochie. With this sound the culture tank opened. Cough, cough, cough. Shiro Amiya, who had just adapted to the culture fluid, was not used to the air and coughed a few times as soon as he came out.
Senpai, are you okay?
Sakura Madu rushed forward and supported Shiro Amiya. I'm fine, Sakura. I'm just not used to the air. Now, I feel like all the impurities in my body have been removed. It's very relaxed. Shiro Amiya smiled and then said as he felt his body. Now, no matter how you use that power, it won't have any effect on your body, Shiro. Chapter 287. Thank you, big brother. Shiro Amiya said sincerely. Wuming knew that he had to accept this gratitude no matter what. What are you talking about? You're my brother. Even if you're my sworn brother, there's no need to say thank you between us. Wuming didn't look back. Wuming waved his hand and put the culture tank on the ground. Sakura, go make something delicious for Shiro. Now Shiro's body needs to be nourished. It's best if it's meat. I remember there's still a lot of meat in the freezer. The freezer's location hasn't changed. Shiro knows where it is. Wuming turned around and said to Sakura Madu, who was supporting Shiro Amiya. Yes, I understand. Oni-sama, then I'll leave with Senpai first. Just as Sakura Madu was about to support Shiro Amiya to leave, Wuming said. Don't forget to leave your rank card behind. I didn't help you adjust your rank card. If your life is in danger because you used your rank card too much, I'm afraid Scholar will fight me to the death. Wuming teased at the end. Sakura Madu blushed. What? Big brother, don't drag me into this. Shiro Amiya smiled helplessly. Then, I'll leave it to you, Oni-sama. Sakura Madu took out a card. On it was a picture of a man wearing a beast horn mask, holding a big sword, pretending to be crazy. This was Sakura Madu's Berserker card. The power inside was the Berserk Lancelot. Okay, that's enough. You guys can go now. Wuming took the card and said casually. Berserk Lancelot? The guy known as the Knight of the Lake will also degenerate into a berserker? How ironic. Wuming looked at the class card in his hand and smiled uninterestedly. After that, Wuming began to prepare for the purification of the class cards. The class cards that Ainsworth had made all had the negative ability to corrode one's heart and body. Because Shiro Amiya was using the power of his future self, he was almost immune to the psychological damage, but he couldn't avoid the physical damage. That was because the cards had been soaked in the black mud during the manufacturing process. Wuming carefully delved into it and discovered that the interior of the card had the scent of the black mud. Combined with the fact that a job grade card could erode a person's body and mind, this job grade card, including the one Wuming had given to Ilya and the others, as well as the one in Blackie's body, had all been created by the black mud. However, after taking out Wuming and young Gil, as well as the 7 class cards that had been brought to the world of Ilya, they had all been baptized by the Holy Grail known as Mei Yu, purifying all of these class cards, and the negative effects that corroded one's heart and body had all disappeared. That was what Wuming was doing now. Eliminate all the negative effects that corrode the user's body inside the card. Although Wuming was not the Holy Grail, in terms of spiritual purification, Wuming's noble phantasm, the Nameless Spellbook, had a lot of spells in this area. Although the two are somewhat different, it should work. Wuming said to himself. In the past, what if? Noble and powerful, wise and kind, I will become a double miracle and lead the world to the dawn. Wuming directly activated the power of double authority. In this way, the purification of the negative effects of the class cards should be foolproof. After all, it was the power of a god, and a mere class card couldn't compete with it at all. Wuming placed the Nameless Spellbook on the table and opened it casually. Wuming took the class card and placed the class card on the Nameless Spellbook. The class card automatically floated above the Nameless Spellbook. He didn't even need to chant an incantation. The Nameless Spellbook automatically activated with Wuming's thoughts, and began to purify the class cards. As expected, it's because of the black mud. Wuming felt the analysis of the class card and frowned. Fortunately, I'm not the same as I used to be after returning to the root. Wuming smirked. After that, Wuming injected an unknown power into the Nameless Spellbook. Beezizit. Like an ordinary object touching sulfuric acid, the class card made a sizzling sound. Then, a small black gas floated out of the class card and disappeared into nothingness. Done. Wuming grabbed the class card. Excessive amounts of ice would seal the flames in the body and extinguish them. However, for the endless flames, a little bit of ice was nothing. It would melt, evaporate, and turn into nothingness.
Julian must have realized my return, Wu Ming said thoughtfully. I have to hurry.
With the sound of the door closing, Wu Ming left the room. Winterwood City, Big Hollow, Ainsworth Castle.
A sloppy middle-aged man with messy hair and thin clothes stood at the highest point of the castle, looking at the scenery in the distance.
If one looked closely, one would find that the man's eyes were filled with fanaticism and darkness.
Thud!
This was the sound of a person half kneeling on the ground.
The man didn't turn his head and spoke directly.
It seems like you've lost completely, Angelica, Beatrice. The man said with a deep feeling.
However, no matter how one listened, one could tell that the owner of the voice was not in a good mood.
I'm sorry, Master Darius, we failed, Angelica said calmly. She was not upset or worried about the failure of the mission. That was right. These two people were Angelica and Beatrice, who Wu Ming thought had no chance of surviving. Although both of them survived Wu Ming's attack, Beatrice was worried about whether she could survive the attack of Master Ainsworth. Beatrice, who was beside Angelica, didn't dare to speak. Beatrice was just like Angelica, half kneeling on the ground, but she didn't say a word. After all, Beatrice was not a pure puppet. She accepted the rank card to become Ainsworth's combat power voluntarily. Because of the effect of Hercules' noble phantasm, Beatrice only fell into a state of suspended animation, so she was not brainwashed by Darius. He did not want those who died to be deprived of emotions and placed on puppets. After all, the other party really volunteered to help him, so there was no need to spend energy to convert them.
Mama, I can't blame you.
I didn't expect Hyunryong to really resurrect beside our princess, Darius said with joy. The evil dragon that kidnapped the princess. How can a mere soldier bring the princess back? This needs to be done by a brave prince. What do you think?
Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha.
Looking at Darius, who was laughing like a lunatic, Angelica and Beatrice did not speak anymore.
One felt that there was no need to speak, and the other was too scared to speak.
For a moment, Darius stopped laughing, then said calmly to Angelica, "Inform those puppets that the enemy is coming."
Yes, Master Darius.
Chapter 288. On the same day, Wu Ming helped Mei Yu and Ilya learn how to use Dream Summon install. He also guided Xiao Hei while he was at it. Originally, this task should have been given to Shiro Amiya. However, Sakura Madu was worried that Shiro Amiya wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Even the food was personally delivered by Sakura Madu to Shiro Amiya's room. According to Wu Ming's deduction, he found out that Shiro Amiya was also being fed by Sakura Madu. After all, Wu Ming could be considered as half a mentor to Shiro Amiya. Although he couldn't use the moves of his disciple, he could still give some pointers to Xiao Hei. Subsequently, Xiao Hei successfully developed a skill that could be considered a new ability, which made Xiao Hei very excited. After that, Wu Ming made glutinous rice balls for the three of them, making 3 smiling faces and 3 different types of laughter accompany Wu Ming. After that, Wu Ming took some free time to find Rin Enbin and Livia. Wu Ming brought them to the room in the center of the Shuasuki residence and folded the space to reveal the control room. After seeing all this, the people who were originally interested in the control room, including Rin Enbin and Livia, were all shocked. Although this isn't a secret, the control room is also the core of my magic workshop. You two must be obedient and don't cause any trouble. This was Wu Ming's advice to Rin Enbin and Livia, whose eyes were shining when they saw the control room.
Okay.
Of course, Wu Ming wouldn't easily believe that the two wouldn't drop the ball at a critical moment. Therefore, Wu Ming left Collis behind as an assistant to Rin Enbin and Livia. In addition to supervising Rin Enbin and Livia, Collis had another important task, which was to assist the two in the construction of the magic workshop. After all, this was Kenzaki's shrine. Even if Wu Ming simplified it to modern technology, the two of them wouldn't be able to learn how to use it in a single day. That night, after dinner, everyone gathered in the conference room again. As usual, Wu Ming sat at the head of the table, while the others sat on either side of him. Young Gil sat in the middle. Everyone, go to sleep later and conserve your strength. Angelica and Beatrice did not come back. Ainsworth must be able to infer that I am back. Maybe the other party will attack directly regardless of the safety of the Winterwood citizens. Directly. Directly launch an attack. Isn't magic supposed to be hidden and not be known to ordinary people? Will Ainsworth really break this rule? Ilya had been in the magic world for a long time, so she already understood a lot of these rules. Although this world had experienced the experience of almost being destroyed, with the help of Zelik, this world successfully escaped from destruction. Even so, the world's population had decreased to a certain extent, and even now, Winterwood City had not fully recovered to its former prosperity. But the people were not afraid, it was just that the population base had decreased, and they still continued to live. Ainsworth's goal is the Holy Grail. Let's not talk about whether they know that May came back with me. With Ainsworth's idea, as long as they get rid of me, no one can stop them from getting the Holy Grail. Wu-Ming explained. When this world was gradually approaching destruction, the magicians from all over the world were the first victims. As the saying goes, if the sky falls, the tall man will hold it up. After the magicians lost a lot of their lives, Zelik spent a lot of effort to resolve the crisis of this world. As for what the crisis was, Wu-Ming didn't know, nor was he interested in knowing. He only knew that because of the decrease in magicians, the Ainsworth family on the other side of the world had become the local tyrant. This was also the reason why the large pit on the side of Winterwood City had not been repaired for 5 years. I can only say that we can't eliminate the possibility of an attack at night. After all, I have already discovered that they are monitoring this place. Wu-Ming said calmly. Let's leave it at that for the time being. Everyone, go to sleep. If nothing unexpected happens, we will attack Ainsworth tomorrow morning. After Wu-Ming finished speaking, everyone looked at each other and nodded. Night fell, and Wu-Ming looked in the direction of Ainsworth. With a golden light, young Gil appeared beside Wu-Ming. Why are you here? Good boy, you still need to sleep. Wu-Ming looked at young Gil casually. Ha ha ha, teacher is so gentle. Wu-Ming's words made young Gil laugh. I'm actually here to tell you that I sensed the aura of my upper body. As soon as young Gil said that, Wu-Ming's body trembled, but he reacted quickly. Both of them came back alive? They are so lucky. Wu-Ming squinted his eyes and looked at young Gil. Then, I'll give you your upper body. How about that? Young Gil, on the other hand, smiled gently. Teacher, you must be joking. Although it's my lower body, it has most of my relics. Of course I know how powerful I am. You want your lower body, right, Gil? Wu-Ming suddenly said. Yes, of course. Of course I want to be complete. Young Gil said as if it was a matter of course. Now, I suddenly realized that you were the most difficult to deal with when you were young. Wu-Ming suddenly sighed. He relaxed his aura that was always ready. As if he was on vacation, Wu-Ming lay on the roof. After becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was extremely arrogant and complacent. Before becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was gentle and elegant. He always kept his cool. Compared to the guy in front of him who always had a smile and was always calm, Wu-Ming felt that the arrogant and complacent Gilgamesh was easier to talk to. I really hate myself after growing up. I really don't understand why I became like that. Young Gil also put down his smile and returned to his original posture. He leaned against Wu-Ming and sat down. Really, wouldn't it have been better if you were like this earlier? You made both of us so troublesome. Young Gil was like a real child as he casually said to Wu-Ming. Who told you to stare at Mayu so aggressively from the beginning, you idiot? Wu-Ming said as he cursed and hit young Gil's head. I can't help it. After all, my heart has always wanted to obtain the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is right in front of me. How could I give it up? After all, Wu-Ming did not use much strength. Young Gil only touched his head symbolically and then chatted with Wu-Ming. That's right. Although the two of them had a good relationship as master and disciple, they always seemed to treat each other as outsiders. That was because both of them were pretending. Then what made you give up on Mayu? Wu-Ming asked young Gil in a tone that said he already knew the answer. You really have a bad taste. You clearly know the reason, yet you still ask me. Young Gil looked helplessly at Wu-Ming. Wu-Ming did not mind young Gil's words. He smiled and looked at the sky without saying anything. That's right. No matter what, Wu-Ming was like Gilgamesh's adoptive father. Even if it was the Gilgamesh of the parallel world, how could Wu-Ming not understand him? Chapter 289. As early as when Wu Ming and young Gil noticed that there were enemies coming to the parallel world, young Gil had already noticed that half of his body was missing. Originally, I just wanted to destroy them in another world. That way, your body wouldn't be able to come back. Wu Ming looked at the sky and confessed to young Gil. Of course I know. You were there at that time. You definitely wouldn't allow me to get my body back, so I didn't ask for much. Young Gil helplessly waved his hand. But they came back alive. Isn't this what people often say about fate? That's it. I'll help you get your body back. You're not allowed to have any ideas about Mei Yu and the others. Wu Ming glanced at young Gil. In modern terms, you're really a lullicon. Young Gil laughed heartily. That's it. Don't you want the Holy Grail? I'll give you one. Suddenly Wu Ming said. Ha! You don't let me have any ideas about Sister Mei Yu and the others, but you want to give me the Holy Grail? So, where is the Holy Grail that you want to give me? Young Gil was puzzled. You also know that since the fall of the Uruk dynasty, I didn't die. Wu Ming did not directly tell young Gil where the Holy Grail was. Instead, he talked about his own experience with young Gil. I once went to a world. In that world, there was a different kind of Holy Grail war. Oh, a different kind of Holy Grail war. Young Gil showed great interest. Yes, it was a Holy Grail war with 14 servants. The black side and the red side, each had 7 servants. The black side launched a defensive battle in order to hold the Holy Grail that was already in their hands. The red side launched a siege in order to compete for the Holy Grail that was protected by the black side. Wu Ming continued to look at the starry sky and spoke leisurely without turning his head. First, Black Saber committed suicide, and Red's berserker was captured. Then, Black's rider rebelled with an android and became neutral. Red Saber left the main force, and Black's assassin went out of control. Together with the additional supervisor ruler and the cheating servant ruler who survived the previous Holy Grail war, they launched an unprecedented Holy Grail war. Ha ha ha, that sounds like a pretty good show. Even I want to see these clowns. Young Gil laughed with great interest. And then, who took the Holy Grail in the end? Young Gil asked impatiently. Wu Ming smiled at this. Of course it's me, your teacher. Ha ha ha, I knew it. In this world, only the 2 of us are qualified to possess the Holy Grail. Those clowns are really overestimating themselves. Young Gil wiped the tears from his laughter and looked at Wu Ming apologetically. Sorry, teacher. It's really funny. So, do you mean to give me the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War? I originally thought so, but... Wu Ming said slowly. But... I regret it, my disciple. As if he was playing with young Gil, Wu Ming said happily. Is that so? It's similar to what I guessed, but it doesn't matter. Young Gil, who originally had a desire for the Holy Grail, now seemed to have entered sage mode. Young Gil also lay down next to Wu Ming. The Holy Grail is just a desire. I'm now interested in the Holy Grail war you mentioned. When I get back my real body, I'll go to the parallel world to try my luck and see if I can encounter it. After all, there are parallel worlds where the 14 Nights War happened. Even if you're my teacher, I won't accept your charity, young Gil said with a domineering tone. That's right, in young Gil's view, the so-called cooperation now was just young Gil's one-sided weakness. Even if he got back his real body and recovered all his strength, Gilgamesh and Hyunryong could still fight to a draw. In this way, the Holy Grail was charity. You really haven't changed, Gil. Wu Ming touched young Gil's head and said with some surprise. What do you mean haven't changed? This king has never changed, okay? Young Gil slapped Wu Ming's hand away in disdain. Do you think Ainsworth will come tonight? Wu Ming suddenly asked. Heh, isn't that obvious? Young Gil said with some disdain. The clowns are always the first to appear, teacher. Wu Ming and young Gil sat up and looked at the street not far from the Shuayu residence. A black figure flashed from there. Assassin, it seems that the other party can't wait. It seems that this is the other party's vanguard. Wu Ming raised his arm and slid it gently, and a screen appeared in front of Wu Ming. On the screen, the assassin in a black robe and a skull mask was constantly moving toward here. Vanguard? I think it's cannon fodder. Young Gil smiled. Hassan, I just don't know which Hassan it is, but it doesn't matter. Wu Ming obviously recognized the true identity of this assassin. It couldn't be helped. Hassan was too easy to recognize. Maybe it's one of the dozen Hassans. It doesn't matter. After all, it's just a clown among clowns.
Young Gil waved his hand casually.
You're right. Wu Ming smiled as well. At that moment, Hassan, who was approaching the Shuayu residence, suddenly stopped and dodged to the side. However, a sharp arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot at the assassin, piercing through his head. Somewhere in the Shuayu residence, a transparent ripple appeared and disappeared. Needless to say, the arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot out from the transparent ripple. Then, the assassin collapsed on the ground. The magic in his body began to burn, and eventually, he turned into an automaton. A card fell on the ground, but strangely, the card turned into ashes along with the user and disappeared with the wind. It seems like this is a one-time use card. Has Ainsworth learned his lesson?
Wu Ming flew up and said to young Gil.
So, Gil, can you help me call everyone?
Of course, teacher. Young Gil disappeared from the roof with a flash of golden particles.
Wu Ming came to the courtyard of the Shuayu residence and inserted one hand into the ground. Space fold expand. After a while, Elia was woken up by Mei Yu and put on her clothes.
Mei Yu, are the enemies here?
Ilya rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Mei Yu. Yes, Sister Rin asked me to wake you up. They have all gathered. Brother Wu Ming found the enemy's tracks. We have to prepare in advance. After that, Mei Yu pulled Ilya toward the courtyard of the Shuayu residence. Wu, why do they have to come at this time? Damn it, it's like sleeping. Mei Yu turned her head and comforted Ilya. Don't worry, Ilya. Brother Wu Ming is here. When the preparations are complete, you can go and sleep for a while. I will call you again. No need, Mei Yu. After all, the enemy has already attacked. It's better to be serious.
Ilya waved her hand awkwardly.
Speaking of which, why haven't we reached the end after walking for so long? Mei Yu had been pulling Ilya for a while.
Ilya discovered that they still hadn't reached the courtyard.
Could it be ghosts? Ilya's expression instantly became flustered. Unfortunately, Ilya's whimsical theory was denied. No, it's Wu Ming who expanded the folded space of the Shuayu residence. That's why we haven't reached the end after walking for so long.
Mei Yu shook her head.
That's right. Ilya-chan. You are obviously a magical girl. How can you be afraid of ghosts? With me here, Ilya-chan can catch ghosts.
Ruby's sleepy voice came out from Ilya's hair.
You lazy bug. It's time to get up. Stop talking.
Ilya ridiculed Ruby.
Sister, come out quickly. The enemy has arrived.
Sapphire, who had already come out from Mayo's hair, floated behind Ilya's head and said to Ruby, hidden in her hair.
Yes, I'll come out now.
Ruby said somewhat unwillingly.
We're here.
Mayu stopped and pushed open the door to the courtyard.
This is... Chapter 290. Ilya's eyes widened when she saw the scene in the courtyard. She was speechless. The courtyard that was originally several dozen square meters had exceeded Ilya's calculations. It was so big that she couldn't even see the end. Ilya estimated that it was several thousand square meters. In this several thousand square meters courtyard, there were huge steel golems that were more than 3 meters tall. They were like an orderly army that was arranged in an orderly manner. These steel puppets were like high-tech robots. Just one of them was enough for Ilya to sense danger, not to mention the countless puppets in the courtyard. These are... Ilya didn't dare to speak. Mayu, Ilya, why are you two so late? We're just waiting for you too. Little Black waved at Ilya and Mayu, who had just arrived. Ilya and Mayu hurriedly ran over. Sorry, Little Black. The space inside the house after unfolding the spatial folding is a little large. I spent some time bringing Ilya. Mayu apologized to Little Black. You don't have to apologize for such a small matter. Speaking of which, could it be that Ilya was lazing in bed and couldn't get up? That's why you're late, right? Little Black looked at Ilya with a gaze that seemed to see through everything. How is that possible? Little Black, why would I laze in bed? Ahaha. Ilya touched the back of her head and laughed. In fact, Little Black wasn't wrong. Is that so? Don't forget that we used to be one body.
I basically know all your habits, Ilya.
Wait. Wait a minute, that.
I didn't.
Little Black's words caused Ilya to stutter and become speechless. Stop fooling around, you two. Let's get down to business. Rin Enbin said to the two who were teasing and being teased.
He instantly glared at Little Black.
Blackie, on the other hand, turned his head away while whistling. Everyone looked at Wu Ming attentively. Beside Wu Ming, who had his eyes closed, a black teleportation door opened. Another steel golem walked out. It walked to a fixed position and stood there steadily. Then Wu Ming opened his eyes. That should be enough.
Then Wu Ming began to chant.
Under the night sky, under the brilliance of the light, form an ancient covenant with me. Here, thy body belongs to us, and we govern thy body. Gods of darkness and light, form a covenant here. As the words were uttered, the ground of the lunar manor began to change. First, it was mixed with a trace of golden light. Then, like a swamp, the ground slowly swallowed the countless iron golems standing on the ground. Only when all the steel golems had disappeared did the earth return to its original state. Were all these steel men swallowed by the earth?
Ilya was a little surprised.
Don't worry.
Wu Ming walked up to Ilya and rubbed her little head. The color of the earth just now was the effect of my noble phantasm.
Now, they are staying in my noble phantasm, waiting for my summons. That's right. What Wu Ming just used was one of the uses of his kin avatar. Originally, that avatar was Mecker's ability to summon locusts to devour everything. Combined with Wu Ming's own evolution, that ability became the ability to summon his avatar. But even if it evolved, the original ability would not disappear, and it still had the effect of summoning creatures. However, because Wu Ming and the locust's attributes were not compatible, there was nothing in Wu Ming's kin space. That required Wu Ming to find creatures who volunteered to be Wu Ming's summoned creatures to fill in the space. Compared to living creatures with flesh and blood, Wu Ming was more inclined to these golems without self-consciousness. That was what happened just now. Wu Ming summoned the strongest steel golem in Nazalik's kin space. After entering Wu Ming's noble phantasm, those steel golems would automatically become Wu Ming's summoned creatures because they were unconscious. As long as Wu Ming activated his dependent incarnation and didn't transmit his aura to that incarnation, then all those magic puppets would have the power to restrain the black mud. Of course, the other side would also have the power to restrain this side. In short, both sides restrained each other. Let's go, everyone, the other side has begun to move. In order to avoid affecting the city, I decided to attack the other side's base directly. Everyone nodded. Immediately afterward, Wu Ming, Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, Gil, and Bazette left Shuasuki House together. Rin and Osaka, Luvia, Ilya, Meiyu, and Xiao Hei stayed in Shuasuki House. Let's go, Ms. Rin, Ms. Luvia. Let's quickly activate the Master's Temple and go to the other side's base.
Kala suddenly appeared behind Rin and Osaka and Luvia without any warning and said,
Rin and Osaka and Luvia were both startled. After seeing Cullis, who was of the same race as Ruby and Sapphire, they both calmed down. I know, let's go.
It's improper to scare a lady.
Rin and Osaka and Luvia complained and went to the control room. Then let's go and prepare. Xiao Hei began to move. Wait a minute. Blackie. Didn't Brother Wu Ming tell us to stay here obediently? Ilya looked at Blackie, wanting to say something but hesitating. Xiao Hei turned his head away with a look of disdain. Should I say that you're a fool or an idiot? Big Brother did tell us to stay here as obediently as possible, but there are always accidents. We have to be prepared. If Big Brother and the others can't win for a while, we can go and help.
Xiao Hei turned his head and looked at Meiyu.
Meiyu would agree with me. Meiyu, who didn't expect Xiao Hei to ask her, was startled at first, but then she reacted. It's not impossible to prepare a little. Back then, when Wu Ming asked the three of them to stay in Shuasuki House, Meiyu was still a little angry. She became a magical girl. Other than to collect class cards, she also wanted to increase her power and help Wu Ming. Although Meiyu was a good girl, good girls also had a stubborn side.
Ilya, let's go and prepare, just in case.
Looking at Meiyu's determined eyes, Ilya didn't know what to do and nodded.
Then, all right,
Let's go, let's go. If we help Big Brother later, we can ask for a reward.
Xiaofan pushed the two of them and started to tempt them.
Xiaofan, don't push me away. Reward? Ignoring Ilya's cry of surprise, Xiaofan saw that Miyu had fallen into his trap and immediately spoke. That's right, that's right. Don't you want Big Brother to kiss you? I missed that night very much. As he spoke, Xiaofan pretended to be seductive and tempted the two of them.
That night.
Miyu was stunned. Not pure. Xiaofan, you're a girl. You have to be reserved, understand? Yes, yes. Let's go, let's go. Chapter 291. Outside the Winterwood City Pit, Wu Ming and his group came here. Let's stop here for the time being. Wu Ming waved his hand and motioned for the group to stop moving forward. So, do we need to attack directly, teacher? Young Gil put his hands behind his head and said in a relaxed and casual tone. No need, the other party has already noticed that we are here. Wu Ming shook his head. They are already at the door. How can the other party not notice that someone is coming? Wu Ming looked at the empty pit with a sarcastic expression. Still so pretentious, Ainsworth. Is displacement magic really so omnipotent? Just after Wu Ming finished speaking, there was a slight change in the center of the big pit. Accompanied by spatial fluctuations, figures came out of the ripples one by one. Darius led Angelica, Beatrice, and a few strangers who had no consciousness in their eyes to walk out. Long time no see, Mr. Wu Ming. Darius greeted Wu Ming gently. Ha! Julian is not here? Shiro Amiya saw that Julian was not among the people who came out of the ripples and spoke subconsciously. Calm down, Shiro. I will tell you about Julian later. Wu Ming knew that although Julian had already broken up with Wei Gong Shiro, the things that happened between the two in the school before, and the friendship that developed between them, were all real. With Shiro Amiya's character, it was difficult for him to completely let go of Julian. After Shiro Amiya heard Wu Ming's words, he nodded and said nothing. He knew that this was a battlefield now. Looking back, Wu Ming looked at Darius. Well, long time no see, Darius. Wu Ming also responded gently with a smile. People who didn't know might think that the two were best friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. This is really fate. I remember the last time we met like this. Darius touched his chin with one hand and supported the hand that was touching his chin with the other hand as he thought carefully. You are really forgetful, Darius. The one who met me was your son, Julian Ainsworth. Yes, look at my memory, ha ha ha. In the face of Wu Ming's mistake, Darius clenched one fist and punched the other hand with a look of, I forgot to thank you for the reminder. After laughing for a moment, Darius said, Then the greetings are almost done. After Darius finished speaking, the few people behind him walked in front of Darius in unison. Their eyes were lifeless like robots. Same to you. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Come and see my latest card, Hyunryong, Sama. Darius bowed deeply to Wu Ming like a noble. However, to be honest, it was really disgusting. Install, Dream Summon. Each of the dolls took out a class card and activated Dream Summoning. They stuck the class card on their bodies. Boom! Following their Dream Summon, a large amount of magical power erupted and impacted the surroundings. Every golem was wrapped in a huge pillar of light. The tornadoes created by the magic pillars kept blowing in the direction of Wu Ming and the others. Wu Ming and the others' clothes fluttered. Brother! Shiro Amiya took a step forward and said to Wu Ming with a serious expression. Don't worry, Shiro. Wu Ming stopped Shiro Amiya, who was a little emotional, and said, Let's see what the other party is up to. In fact, Wu Ming was worried that Darius had made a few class cards with special abilities. After all, the level of a noble phantasm was not the most important thing, but whether it could restrain a noble phantasm. Many times, a low-level noble phantasm could restrain many high-level noble phantasms. It was just like the relationship between Shakespeare and Joan of Arc in the Battle of 14 Nights that Wu Ming participated in. Shakespeare said it himself. We don't have the ability to fight. We can only pick up a pen and write to record this tragedy. She didn't know magic at all, she didn't have any skill in making props, and she could only build her own study room. She was a third-rate servant with no actual combat ability, but she was able to restrain Joan of Arc by relying on her noble phantasm. There should be a thunderous applause here. Fortunately, The aftermath of the battle between Wu Ming and Karna affected Shakespeare and Joan of Arc at that time. Otherwise it would be terrible. However, Wu Ming estimated that with Joan of Arc's EX level of magical power, coupled with her unusually strong spirit. Having said that, faith was really a scary thing. For faith, Tian Chao lived for 60 years. For faith, Joan of Arc endured the first few rounds of spiritual destruction before Wu Ming broke Shakespeare's noble phantasm. Sure enough, faith was the way to go. Ahem. Let's get back to the topic. Moreover, not only noble phantasms, but even servants had restraints. If Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang appeared in the same Holy Grail war, Zhou Yu would be restrained by Zhuge Liang. The noble phantasm was sublimated from the legends of his life, so the cause of Zhou Yu's death, which was being controlled by Zhuge Liang, would definitely accompany him. Just like Karen's death rate when encountering something related to poison, it would greatly increase. Although Wu Ming didn't think that anyone could restrain him, it was difficult to guarantee that Shiro Amiya and the others would not be restrained. Don't worry, everyone. These cards are not targeted at your noble phantasm. These are just cannon fodder used in the battle. Darius saw the concerns of Wu Ming and the others, so he didn't care about the card using puppets and spoke directly. You might as well send out your Black Mud Servant Army. A group of guys without self-awareness. There's nothing to worry about. Wu Ming laughed. Wu Ming was not underestimating the enemy. That was the truth. No matter what they are, just wash them all away. God says, humans are sinful. God says, humans need to be purified. So, send the monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will grant equal relief. As the spirit of speech finished speaking, the sky above Darius and the others seemed to be torn apart, and a hole was broken in space. Countless streams of water gushed out from this gap. However, when it was about to touch Darius and the others, a large purple magic array appeared and caught the water. Then, a purple virtual frame gap appeared above Wu Ming and the others. The water that Wu Ming summoned was used by Darius in turn, directly replacing the space of two places? I have to say, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really the pinnacle of magic. Wu Ming praised the displacement magic. Thank you for your praise. Darius seemed to be proud of it and bowed to Wu Ming again. But, my things are not so easy to control. The water that fell on Wu Ming and the others automatically dispersed when it was about to touch Wu Ming and the others. It fell to the ground and slowly flowed into the big pit. Because Wu Ming and the others were on a higher ground, and Darius and the others were on a lower ground, the water naturally flowed into the big pit. Aya, it seems that the substitution magic isn't working anymore. Darius laughed self-deprecatingly. Chapter 292. At this moment, the inside of the big pit in Winterwood City was filled with water. Only Wu Ming and the others were at the top of the big pit, and Darius and the others were at the center of the big pit, protected by displacement magic. Oh! Hyunryong, Sama, I didn't expect you to have such a godlike ability. Did you hide it last time? Darius said with a little excitement. Sorry, I didn't hide it. It's okay to tell you. This is a new ability I got from killing the gods of other worlds. Wu Ming answered Darius's question quite casually. God. Is that true, big brother? Wei Gongshi looked at his elder brother with an even more unusual gaze. Not only was Wei Gongshi like this, even Tong Ying and Bizette had a doubtful look on their faces. Only young Gil was quite excited. Good job, Sensei. When will you kill those gods of Sumer mythology? Young Jill said such terrifying words with his beautiful face. Wu Ming didn't say anything about it. Not only Wu Ming knew, but young Gil also knew that the original gods were forced to enter a higher dimension after Konagami's generation, and they could no longer interfere with the operation of the main world. In a sense, those gods were dead and killed by the world. Since Hyunryong-sama has already made his move, then we can't be weak. With that said, Darius waved his hand, and one of the people who had completed the transformation using the class card raised the bow in his hand. The bow in his hand was very simple, and he was wearing a simple leather armor. He looked abnormally energetic, but his eyes, which were called the soul of a person, were very turbid. The puppet man received Darius's command, and like a machine, he drew the bow and arrow and aimed at the sky. Stella! The puppet man said softly without emotion, then released the bowstring, and the arrow flew to the sky. PFFF. After shooting the arrow, the man's body shattered into pieces. Then, he turned into a broken automaton, and an archer class card turned into ashes. Is it a relic that will be thrown away once it's used? Wu Ming could tell that his opponent had to sacrifice himself to use the relic. As expected of Ainsworth, such a relic was usually quite powerful. Wu Ming raised his head to look at the arrow. After reaching the highest point, the arrow began to descend. As it descended, the power of the arrow increased bit by bit. With Wu Ming's senses, he could tell that once the arrow landed on the ground, it would explode with boundless power that could tear the earth apart. Shiro, use Roajax to protect the two of them. Wu Ming made a prompt decision and asked Shiro Amiya to use his defensive relic. I don't need to worry about you. Then, Wu Ming looked at young Gil. Ah, of course, at least I still have the ability to protect myself. Young Gil flicked his hair and waved his hand casually. That's it then. Immediately, Wu Ming took a step forward. Lightning! 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 I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me, who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly, and give me divine power. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. On the Lord's day, the sinner shall be punished. Crush his back, dig out his tendons, bones, hair, and brain, and trample on his blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot get close to the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. In an instant, Wu Ming cancelled his Flood incarnation and activated his Thunder God incarnation and Annihilation incarnation. Beep beep beep. Wu Ming's body began to flicker with red lightning that was so red it was frightening. Actually, if you dodge now, you should be able to avoid this noble phantasm. Young Gil kindly reminded him. That made Wu Ming laugh. If it's you, will you dodge it? Wu Ming asked. Of course not, as a king. There's no need to dodge an unknown clown's noble phantasm. Young Gil shook his head. I'm the same, my disciple. As the teacher of the ancient king, Wu Ming also had a trace of similarity with Gilgamesh. Wu Ming would directly trigger certain things that could be avoided. The unknown was what Wu Ming had always been searching for. That was also one of the points. However, Wu Ming was not an enemy that he would fight head-on. Otherwise, in Uruk, Wu Ming would not have left with Enkidu, but Wu Ming would have fought directly. At that time, although Wu Ming had not yet grown up, and his talent and physical fitness as the root dragon were still very poor, Wu Ming could still fight against these gods at the cost of his vitality. After all, Wu Ming was also the root dragon, and he had the strength to do so. In less than 50 years, Wu Ming was able to successfully awaken the root dragon's body from an ordinary boy to the point where he could kill gods. That was all thanks to the root dragon's bloodline. That was both a price and a benefit. They sacrificed the strength that other higher life forms were born with in exchange for unprecedented growth in just 50 or even 40 years. This might be the reason why the origin of origins dragons were able to become peak existences that roamed the various worlds. However, Wu Ming seemed to have added the convenience provided by the root dragon's bloodline to his luck. In addition, Wu Ming did not dodge for the sake of Winterwood City. Judging by Wu Ming's naked eye, the arrow that was about to fall from the sky definitely had the power to blow up Winterwood City. Not to mention that Rin Dosaka and the others were still in Winterwood City. Wu Ming still had the attitude of saving the ordinary people if he could. If he was rich, he would help the world. If he was poor, he would take care of himself. That was the truth. Since I can't dodge, then I'll just melt this arrow that's comparable to a meteor. With that said, Wu Ming's lightning burst out and condensed into a lightning beam. It will crush all enemies and enmity, both humans and demons. Wu Ming chanted the Thunder God's incarnation's enhancement rune, which was a special spirit that could instantly enhance the power of the incarnation. This is my body. Boom! The red lightning pillar rushed straight towards the huge source of mana that was descending from the sky. When the two collided, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The white light covered everything, leaving only the residual sound of the explosion, and the violent wind caused by the collision of the authority and the noble phantasm. Chapter 293. When the light gradually disappeared, everyone opened their eyes. The strong hurricane caused by the collision of the relics caused the dust in the air to scatter. As the two relics collided and exploded in mid-air, it did not affect Winterwood City much. However, some of the flowers on the balcony and the signs on the street were blown off. Wuming used his magic to disperse the dust that was wrapped around his body. Behind Wuming, a purplish-red cherry blossom shield appeared in the shape of a ball, protecting the people inside. The cherry blossom shield turned into pure magic and dissipated, revealing Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette. As for young Gil, he did not need anyone to protect him. "Are you guys okay?" Wuming turned around and asked. "We're fine. What about you, big brother? Just now, the Roajax didn't manage to protect you." Although it was said that it did not protect him, it was actually Wuming's request. If everyone lost their vision, it would be dangerous. Moreover, Wuming also needed to deal with any attacks that might come back other than Stella, which was why he wasn't protected by the 7 blazing circles, Roajax. My relic and the opponent's relic cancelled each other out. The only thing that was generated was a super strong storm. This wind is nothing to me. Wuming waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. If it was just the gust of wind that was stirred up just now, that little bit of power was nothing to Wuming. That was a terrifying attack just now. Bazette said with lingering fear. "That's right. If the attack just now landed, let's not talk about whether I could protect you guys. The entire Winterwood City would disappear." Shiro Amiya agreed. What? What is that?" At that moment, Sakura Madu suddenly pointed to the front and asked. Shiro Amiya and Bazette also looked to the front. Wuming was the first to discover it. A semicircular defensive wall, like an ice castle, covered the original location of Darius and the others. After the light produced by the explosion disappeared, Wuming discovered this water-blue ice prison that did not match the sand and dust on the battlefield. Wuming raised his eyebrows and stretched his hand to the side. The golden ripples wrapped around Wuming's right arm. Then, as if he was holding onto something, Wuming suddenly pulled his hand out of the golden ripples. The silver spear of the World Tree appeared in Wuming's hand. Yggdrasil's vines were quite effective against the tortoise shell. My Yggdrasil! Along with the activation of the relic, the Yggdrasil spear was covered in green. Green vines grew from the body of the spear to the tip of the spear. Wuming maintained Yggdrasil's real name liberation status and changed his posture into a throwing position. He aimed at the ice prison and threw it hard. Shio dash! Yggdrasil penetrated the atmosphere and made a sound that broke through the sound barrier. Boom! The ice prison that the World Tree Divine Spear had fiercely attached to exploded violently, and countless vines grew out of the ice prison in a frenzy. A big hole was broken in the ice prison. Swish swish swish. Yggdrasil, who completed the task, returned to Wuming's hand and was firmly grasped by Wuming. Wuming put Yggdrasil back into the golden ripples and looked at Darius and the others in the ice prison. Your tortoise shell is not very good, Darius. Ha ha ha, Hyunryong. Sama, you must be joking. Your spear has the ability to break through this relic. Darius was right. If one looked carefully, the vines triggered by Wuming's relic were all from the inside of the ice prison. No, it should be from the ice of the ice prison to the outside, just like a plant bud growing out of a stone. When Darius touched the relic, the ice prison turned into a rank card and he held it in his hand. 301 Seconds Eternal Ice Palace. That's the name of this relic. What do you think? Not bad, right? Darius took the class card and showed it to Wuming and the others. Unfortunately, the class card did not have a class, nor any picture. 301 Seconds Eternal Ice Palace? Young Gil frowned. What's wrong, Gil? Wuming looked at young Gil. In my memories and my treasury, there is no such precious artifact. Wuming certainly understood what young Gil meant. As the ancient king, Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic. As long as there was a relic that appeared before, it could be found in Gilgamesh's treasury. However, young Jill said that she had never heard of this 301-second Eternal Ice Palace, which was quite thought-provoking. It may also happen to be a relic that was not included in my Gate of Babylon, but the probability is somewhat unbelievable. Although the Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic, it was inevitable that there would be some left out. Almost all of them meant that it was not absolute. It was very likely that this relic was not included in Gilgamesh's treasury. But
I don't believe that he would have a noble artifact that you don't have in your Gate of Babylon.
Wuming looked at Darius again, who had a smile on his face. Maybe, this is a relic that Darius created himself. Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette all widened their eyes. Created his own relic. Is this really possible for modern people? Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief. Well, after all, the one next to you has the ability to create relic. Wuming pointed at Bazette. Is Ms. Bazette so powerful? Sakura Madu looked at Bazette in surprise. Shiro Amiya also looked at this rather cold partner of his in a new light. Although I can create the backlight sword, it is entirely because I am the descendant of the inheritance germ protector family. Compared to your man who has begun to heroic spirit, I am still far behind. Bazette closed her eyes and said calmly to Sakura Madu. On the other hand, Tong Ying and Wei Gong Shiro's faces turned red. Wuming did not pay attention to the conversation between Shiro Amiya and the others. Instead, he looked at Darius, who had a new move. Well.
Since Sir Virtuous Dragon was able to break this precious artifact so easily, then these few cards are just showing off in front of an expert.
As he spoke, Darius took out 2 more job rank cards without any pictures. Next, let's start the real stage performance, Hyunryong, Sama. After that, Darius walked into the transparent ripple behind him. Coincidentally, a large amount of black mud was constantly emerging from the transparent ripple. ZZ. Wuming. I've connected. Suddenly, a virtual screen appeared next to Wuming. On the screen were Collis, Rin Enbin, and Luvia, whose cheeks were red and swollen. Chapter 294. What did you two do just now? Wuming asked curiously when he saw that their cheeks were a little red.
Nothing.
Ahaha. Yeah, ahaha. Rin and Osaka and Luvia waved their hands in a panic, then stared at each other fiercely. How could they say that they were slapped by each other because they were fighting for the master position? Collis bowed to Wuming. Master, due to the sudden explosion of a large amount of magic, our communication was temporarily disrupted, but it's fine now. Wuming nodded. The large amount of magic that Collis was talking about should be the chaos caused by the collision of the relics. We're on our way to your location. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Okay, I understand. Collis, remember to keep an eye on these two. Don't let them cause any trouble. Wuming was still worried about Rin and Osaka and Luvia. Yes, Master. Collis then turned off the communication.
Wuming looked once again at the black mud that had already begun to spread, and at the few card users who were already rushing over.
Shiro, Sakura, Bazette, start attacking the enemy. Remember not to touch the black mud, and protect yourselves first. Wuming noticed that the moment the black mud appeared, except for the puppets that had no self-consciousness, Angelica and Beatrice used displacement magic to separate their feet from the black mud. As for the puppets standing on the black mud, their bodies began to undergo some black changes. There was no doubt that the corrosive power of the black mud had reached its peak. Wuming could feel that the black mud that Julian released last time was nothing compared to this black mud. Understood. Bazette responded, and without waiting for Wuming to finish, he rushed toward the attacking enemies. Wuming raised his eyebrows, feeling helpless. You guys go too. Okay, big brother, Oni-sama. After that, Shiro Amiya covered his body with magic and turned into Amiya's costume. Sakura Madu took out the card that Wuming adjusted before and used Dream Summoning. Install Dream Summoning. The lower half of her body was a normal black armor, but the upper half of her body was a black armor that could only cover her chest. A black mask with only a slit covered her face, and a few lines that looked like electronic cables extended out from behind Midori Sakura. Red mana patterns also wrapped around his body. Even his black armor and mask had red mana patterns on them. Because of Wuming's modification, the black armor was slightly blue, and it didn't have the arrogance of Berserker. It was very suitable for Sakura Madu, a woman like Sakura Madu, to use it, and it could reflect Sakura Madu's beauty. Let's go together, senpai. Sakura Madu smiled at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya reacted, but he didn't blush or even feel embarrassed, but he smiled and nodded. Ah, let's go together, Sakura. Wuming looked at the two running away and shook his head helplessly. Really, you're still so lovey-dovey on the battlefield. However, Wu Ming smiled. Both of them had found a good home. Looking at the black mud followers that kept emerging from the black mud, Wu Ming opened his hands.
Then let's begin, my followers.
My followers, my servants, the time for war has come. So now, show your brave and fearless figure, for your master, for the king. Before the black mud had completely corroded the ground, the earth had already turned golden. 3-meter-tall steel golems walked up step by step, as if they were walking on a staircase. The iron golem that came up from the golden ground had a layer of faint golden light. That was the power of origin, provided by Wu Ming.
And those followers that emerged from the black mud had starlight that was as deep as the universe.
That was the power of origin, provided by the black mud. The power of origin had infinite changes, and there was no fixed form. Even Wu Ming, who was born from origin, couldn't clearly understand origin. Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Countless black mud that couldn't be seen were like zombies, moving slowly in the direction of Wu Ming. These were the heroes that pursued the Holy Grail but didn't end well. Now, they were eroded by the black mud and became abnormal. Bang! An iron fist hit the black mud follower at the front. The iron golems under Wu Ming's command were inanimate and unconscious magic products. The level of the iron golems was not very high. They could only be used as cannon fodder in many top battles, and they were only level 70. However, these iron golems had great magic resistance and physical armor. Although their attack power was not very good, they were quite good as meat shields and delay time. Moreover, Wu Ming's Origin Dragon's aura was added, so these iron golems had a resistance and restraining attribute against the black mud followers.
It was just an armed fist, but with a body that was 3 meters tall, the impact of the fist was not weak. And with the restraining attribute given by silent sound, the black mud followers that were attacked by the iron golem were all emitting black smoke and they were in great pain.
However, as a mutual restraint, the black mud followers could also completely subdue these iron golems with the Origin Dragon's attributes.
Just like divinity in general, divinity often had the power to add damage to everything, but if it encountered a weapon or power that restrained divinity, then the guy with divinity would be unlucky.
One by one, the black mud followers pounced on the iron golems, and their huge bodies brought poor flexibility. The iron golems fell to the ground and were divided by the black mud followers, turning into pure magic power and disappearing. The black mud followers and the iron golems began to fight. At present, it seemed that the iron golems were obviously at a disadvantage, and their foundation was a lot worse. Sure enough, these iron golems alone can't fight against the followers. Even these cracked followers are the same. Wu Ming said in a tone that was expected. However, it's enough to hold them back. Suddenly, whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Wu Ming moved gently and dodged several noble phantoms. The noble phantoms fell to the ground, causing a violent explosion, and then turned into golden particles and disappeared. Wu Ming looked at the place where the noble phantoms were shot.
Angelica stretched out a hand, and several golden ripples appeared on the gate of Babylon behind her.
We meet again, Hyunryong, Angelica said coldly. Wu Ming looked at Tong Ying and Bazette, who were being held back by several puppet-level card users, and Wei Gong Shiro, who was being held back by Beatrice. Then, Wu Ming looked at Angelica again. You're going to be defeated by me, and you're lucky that you didn't die. Why, do you still want to try your luck? On the contrary, Angelica, who was usually emotionless, expressed her feelings this time. I want to defeat you, Sensei. Angelica's originally emotionless eyes revealed a desire to fight. I see. Are you seriously affected by Gilgamesh's card? Wu Ming saw Angelica's current state. Gilgamesh was originally a top-level heroic spirit. Theoretically, even if he was eroded by the black soil, he should be able to maintain his consciousness and not disappear. However, the black soil was not ordinary black soil. It was black soil that was mixed with the root dragon's aura and had the power of the root. This caused the meaning of Gilgamesh's card that Angelica used to be basically clear. However, even if Gilgamesh had lost his consciousness, his power was not something that ordinary people could use. Angelica was subconsciously affected. Coupled with her previous experience of failure, it caused Angelica to be obsessed with Wu Ming. No matter how you look at it, it's your fault, Gil.
Wu Ming looked at young Gil who was standing at the side without moving.
You can't blame me for this, Sensei. It's natural for the disciple to surpass the master. We've never fought before. It's understandable that my lower body wants to surpass you. If you want to blame someone, blame it on being my mentor, Sensei. Young Gil waved his hand and pushed the blame to Wu Ming. Wu Ming smiled. If that's the case, then I'll fight you as Hyunryong, Gilgamesh's mentor, Angelica. Chapter 295. Swish swish swish. Countless relics shot towards Wu Ming from Angelica's back. Boom boom boom. Wu Ming dodged the relics one after another as he moved towards Angelica. The relics behind Wu Ming exploded violently, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Young Jill, on the other hand, was watching the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica with interest from a high vantage point. Is he going to fight as Hyunryong's mentor? I remember that my mentor taught me about combat. Does this mean that my mentor is going to fight with my lower body as a warrior? Young Gil sat cross-legged on the platform with his hands supporting his chin. How nostalgic. Just as young Gil expected, Wu Ming, who was almost in front of Angelica, took out Yggdrasil from the golden ripples at the side. Tisk! Angelica frowned and snorted unhappily. Subsequently, the golden ripples behind Angelica increased in number. Swish swish swish. However, Wu Ming, who had obtained the weapon, began to display his endless martial arts skills. Clang 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 clang. Wu Ming controlled Yggdrasil and displayed the martial arts skills that he had learned from the Mirror Queen, Skaha. Countless relics that were shot towards Wu Ming were deflected. There was nothing fancy or beautiful about it. It was merely a display of martial arts skills to achieve a goal. There were not many fancy moves in the art of killing. The only goal was to kill the enemy. On the other hand, Wu Ming, who had bounced off countless relics, was getting closer to Angelica. Suddenly, a gap appeared in front of Wu Ming, who was moving forward. In an instant, Wu Ming was transported far away. After dodging a few relics, Wu Ming stood firm and looked at Angelica. In a sense, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really cheating. Wu Ming leaned on Yggdrasil and said helplessly, "Ha ha ha, I didn't say that I'm going to fight you as Gilgamesh, mentor." Young Gil, who was in the sky, laughed heartily. Angelica did not agree but did not refute either. "Well, you're right. It's on me this time." Wu Ming smiled. "Then let's start the next round." Wu Ming's eyes suddenly became sharp. A few lune runes appeared and wrapped around Wu Ming's body. Coming! In an instant, Wu Ming's speed became extremely fast and almost reached supersonic speed. Angelica continuously released her relic, but she could only hit Wu Ming's. If that's the case. Angelica opened two parallel spaces behind her, allowing countless relics to constantly move between the two spaces created by the displacement magic, making the relics in the Gate of Babylon accelerate without limit. In an instant, Angelica cancelled the displacement magic, and countless relics burst out at supersonic speed toward Wu Ming. Clang clang clang. Although Wu Ming was hit, Wu Ming's reaction was still able to bounce them away. Yggdrasil! In an instant, Wu Ming performed primary release on Yggdrasil and threw it toward Angelica. The World Tree God's spear rubbed against the air and shot toward Angelica by leaps and bounds. Hum! Accompanied by a faint sound, the space in front and behind Angelica was replaced. Yggdrasil in primary release was just a holy spear with a fierce impact and vitality. It didn't have any extra attributes. Yggdrasil passed through the space and slammed into the ground, causing a violent explosion. The wind caused by the explosion blew Angelica's ponytails, making them flutter in the wind. "Your relic doesn't work, Hyunryong." Angelica still looked indifferent. "Then use the sword." That was Wu Ming, who had taken out X Silver from the golden ripple. X Silver. Wu Ming performed primary release on X Silver. In an instant, light gathered on the sword, and X Silver turned into a huge light sword. As Wu Ming uttered the true name, the lightsaber was violently swung out. The dazzling light rushed toward Angelica. Clang, 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 clang. Shields emerged from the Gate of Babylon behind Angelica and fell to the ground. The shields were stacked on top of each other, forming a shield relic. Boom! The light cannon bombarded the shield, making a loud noise. Angelica dispersed the shield and looked at Wuming.
I've been waiting for you.
Wuming suddenly got in through the gap between the scattered shields and raised the holy sword toward Angelica. Wuming used the light and sound of the light cannon as a cover, blocking Angelica's vision and hearing, sneaking in front of the shield, waiting for an opportunity to attack.
Don't even think about it.
Angelica was shocked, but fortunately, she was vigilant in advance and instantly used displacement magic again. Because the preparation was a bit hasty, this time displacement magic only replaced a small space. It only replaced the space at the tip of the meteor silver and the space behind Wuming. But, if it was me in the past, I might have fallen for it, Wuming suddenly said. Just as the meteor silver was about to enter the space, a golden ripple suddenly appeared in front of the meteor silver. As Wuming leaned forward, the entire meteor silver was swallowed by Wuming's space relic, Dragonist.
Pata!
Wuming's hands entered the space and came out from the space behind Wuming, hitting Wuming's back. Wuming smiled when he felt that he had punched himself. It feels good to massage my own back. However, Wuming's weapon was gone. Angelica naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. I didn't expect the famous Master Hyunryong to make such a low-level mistake. As Angelica spoke to me, countless golden ripples surrounded Wuming and relics appeared one after another.
No, how could that be?
Wuming smiled. I see.
It's that move. Young Gil, who was sitting in the sky with his legs crossed, recalled something and said with interest.
Since young Gil had already recalled it, it didn't make sense that Angelica, who was subconsciously influenced by Gilgamesh, didn't notice the lower half of young Gil's body. Angelica looked at Wuming's smile and felt a strong sense of uneasiness. It seems like Gilgamesh's card power has sensed something, Wuming said, but he didn't let go of his hand. Wuming clenched his fist and countless vines broke out from the ground and entangled Angelica. Yggdrasil, who was not far behind Angelica, had already activated his relic and was ready for battle. Swoosh! The sound of chains was heard and a few golden chains entangled Angelica, sealing her magical power. In just a few breaths, Hyunryong had subdued his disciple, the Hero King. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.